Chapter 2368. You're too naive and ignorant. No wonder you're always being used by others. Thinking about Yuichiro Hayakuya's past, Dustless suddenly lost interest in this guy. He could be called the most tragic protagonist, being used here and there. Even Akemi Hanrin, who he trusted the most, did not hesitate to stab him in the back at the last moment. Right, Xiaoya? Dustless suddenly stopped walking. He looked at Xiaoya and said, I met your father earlier. He asked me to bring you to see him. Father? Xiaoya couldn't help but be stunned. She looked at Dustless in shock and blurted out, What's the matter? Xiaoya was actually very unfamiliar with her father, Tai Tianli. You know, I'm not interested in knowing about your father. Dustless shook his head and looked at Xiaoya meaningfully. He dragged out his tone and said, Your father? No, you should know what kind of family the Tai family is, right? I personally don't think it's a good thing for your father to suddenly look for you. So, I'm only responsible for passing the message to you. If you're determined to leave, I won't stop you. What kind of family was the Tai family? In Dustless's words, it was rotten to the core. This family didn't have the slightest bit of emotion to speak of. There were only interests and using and being used. After a moment of silence, Xiaoya said resolutely, I want to meet my father. Is that so? Then don't regret it. Let's go. That rotten old man called us over. I'm also curious about what kind of rotten idea he has. Tai Tianli was the only one sitting in the dull meeting room. His gaze was deep as he stared at the map. This was a world map. The whole world was in front of him. However, Tai Tianli's gaze was only focused on a small piece of land in Japan. He was old and had no interest in conquering the world and reviving mankind. He only wanted to protect his own power. Knock, knock, knock. After some time, the door of the meeting room suddenly opened. Dustless and Xiaoya walked in without greeting. We haven't seen each other for a long time. No, it seems like I'm getting old. After looking at Dustless for a while, Yun Tianli discovered with envy that Dustless still looked the same as when they first met. His face hadn't aged at all. The same cold eyes, the same coat, the same temperament, the same. The only difference was that Si Tianli was already old. However, looking at Dustless's young appearance, Yun Tianli did not feel the slightest bit of jealousy. All that remained was pure pride. He was very proud that he had not made an enemy out of Dustless back then. He had only roped him in, and they had become friends. Dustless's terrifying strength was the guarantee of Yun Tianli's authority. As long as he could rope in Dustless, he knew that he would be immortal. Xiaoya, you're here. Have a seat. Ran Tianli smiled warmly, dazzling Ran Xiaoya. In her impression, her father had always been cold and harsh. He treated everyone coldly, including a woman like her. Since when did he become so gentle? Ran Xiaoya expressed her confusion. We've known each other for many years. Just say what you want. There's no need to beat around the bush. You know that I don't like to be long-winded. Dustless said impatiently. You're still the same as before. Yun Tianli nodded when he heard this. He was not surprised at all. He glanced at Ran Xiaoya a few more times before saying sternly, I want to betroth Xiaoya to you. The two of you are a match made in heaven. If the two of you get together... Wait! Before Yun Tianli could continue, Dustless immediately stood up. He looked at Yun Tianli in shock and picked his ear. Did I hear wrong? You want to betroth Xiaoya to me? Father. Let alone Dustless, even Ran Xiaoya looked at Yun Tianli in shock. You heard right. Yun Tianli looked into Dustless's eyes and said firmly, After the two of you get together, you will definitely give birth to the most outstanding offspring. My Yun family will also be passed down forever, and will not become a part of history. The latter part is your true motive, right? To let the Yun family pass down forever. Wu Chen looked at Si Tianli, who had a fanatical look in his eyes and ruthlessly dampened his enthusiasm. Nothing can be eternal and immortal. After a long time, everything will decay. You're right, but that's not important to me. Yun Tianli smiled and said seriously, I only cherish what's in front of me. As long as I'm still alive, it'll be fine as long as the Yin family can last forever. Old man, to put it bluntly, this is for your own selfish interests. You're just protecting your rights. Dustless sneered. After working with this old man for a few years, he knew his motive. He didn't have any ambitions and only wanted to protect his rights. As for Ran Xiaoya, she remained silent and didn't have the right to interrupt. However, she felt extremely cold in her heart. She lifted her head and looked at her father. This man was so heartless. In order to protect his rights, he didn't mind giving her away. He didn't even bat an eyelid. Instead of calling her a daughter, she was more like a valuable commodity. However, Ran Xiaoya understood that the Yun family was such a cruel family. For example, the adopted son of the Yun family, Yun Late Night, had Yun Zhenzhou as his fiancée. In order to give birth to outstanding offspring, the Yun family's partners were all giants among men. Dustless was the strongest among the strong. In Yun Tianli's eyes, he was the most suitable stud horse to give birth to the Yun family's next generation. Most importantly, once he had this son-in-law, he wouldn't have to worry about his rights anymore. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.
Oh.
Chapter 2369. What's your answer? Dustless. Si Tianli gazed at Dustless longingly. He was determined to have Dustless. With such a supernuclear weapon in his hands, no one could threaten him in the future. It wasn't just Ran Tianli. Even Ran Xiaoya couldn't take her eyes off Wu Chen. Although there was a huge age gap between the two, Wu Chen was very special. His appearance wouldn't age. On the surface, he looked like he was in his early 20s. He was extremely young. Secondly, Ran Xiaoya was looking forward to it. Of course, she was also repulsed. It could be said that she was conflicted. Her father had given her away just like that. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to accept it. It was worth mentioning that Dustless's legend of invincibility had spread far and wide. Ran Xiaoya was also one of Dustless's admirers. To put it in a more fashionable way, she was a fan. She admired Dustless a lot. About that, Dustless had a headache and was in a difficult position. He really treated Ran Xiaoya as a junior. After all, he watched her grow up and taught her a lot of fighting moves. Wasn't it like an old cow eating young grass if she were to be betrothed to him? Although Dustless didn't think that he was old. If he were to reject Ran Xiaoya, this innocent little girl would definitely be devastated. For a moment, he was in a dilemma and didn't know what to do. We'll talk about it in the future. Xiaoya is too young. Dustless pondered for a moment before giving an ambiguous answer. It was a rejection and an agreement at the same time. No one could guess what he was thinking. Is that so? Since you've decided, I won't interfere. Si Tianli couldn't help but feel disappointed. After working with Dustless for a few years, he knew that he couldn't force him. Chua Xiaoya looked at Dustless. Compared to before, her gaze was rather dim. She looked at Dustless's cold eyes and felt rather bitter inside. When she was mentioned, Dustless's eyes were as calm as still water. Clearly, he was not interested in her. Xiaoya, you can leave first. I have something to discuss with Dustless. Waving his hand, Tai Tianli's tone became much colder. That emotionless tone was as if he was talking to an abandoned child. What a cold-blooded old man. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head. After all, this was someone else's family matter, and he had no right to speak. Lan Xiaoya did not say anything, leaving dejectedly. If you have something to say it. Dustless casually sat down and crossed his legs. He glanced at Si Tianli and said, It's about your son Jimu, right? Not bad. Si Tianli's gaze suddenly turned incomparably cold. He said with hatred, That brat actually did that kind of experiment behind my back. That damn bastard, is he trying to usurp the throne? You know about it? Dustless wasn't surprised. After all, he was the Emperor Ghost Army's marshal, so he naturally knew about certain things. The blazing angel of termination. Si Tianli took a deep breath and said coldly, But don't be happy too early. That son of mine is ambitious and wants to replace me. That's something everyone knows. Many people in the Emperor Ghost Army have sided with him, but I've been feigning ignorance and couldn't be bothered to deal with him. Aren't you worried that he'll kill his father? Dustless looked into Si Tianli's eyes and said meaningfully, You don't need me to say it. As long as there's a suitable opportunity, he'll kill you. It sounded crazy, but that was the truth. In this ugly world, anything could happen. Moreover, Jimmu was ambitious and wanted to lead the Emperor Ghost Army to rule the world. First of all, Si Tianli, who had no intention of competing for hegemony, was his biggest obstacle. It was only a matter of time before father and son met on the battlefield. Moreover, it was worth mentioning that Si Tianli, this cunning old fart, had guessed correctly. In the original work, Jimmu had already planned to kill him and replace him. Don't be happy too early. I understand the grudge between you and Jimmu. If I die, do you think he'll let you go? Si Tianli snorted. His meaning was very simple. He hoped that Dustless would help him. Of course I know he won't let me go. Dustless didn't deny it and only nodded. Si Tianli suddenly laughed. The seraph of termination. That's something that can destroy the world. Aren't you afraid? Hearing this, Dustless only looked at Si Tianli quietly, raised 2 fingers and corrected him. You're wrong about 2 things. Regarding the seraph of termination, I know its essence better than you. Secondly, you said I'm afraid? If you can understand it this way, it can only mean that you're too ignorant. The essence of the seraph of termination? Si Tianli frowned deeply. Hearing Dustless's words, it seemed that there was more to it. That's right. The essence of the seraph of termination isn't to destroy. Dustless's eyes were cold as he said in a deep voice, the essence of this plan is actually to revive the dead, so it's called a taboo experiment. Do you still remember the huge disaster a few years ago? It's actually because some people touched the taboo and touched the seraph of termination, reviving the dead. Because of this, some narrow-minded gods got angry, and this world ushered in the end. There's such a secret. Si Tianli was stunned and felt that his brain wasn't enough to process it. He looked at Dustless without moving. Reviving the dead? Why does it sound like a fairy tale? It sounds unbelievable, but it's the truth. Dustless said with great certainty. As a transmigrator, he was naturally familiar with these secrets. Moreover, the main culprit of the destruction of the world was Ikanes Hanren. He touched the taboo and revived the dead. As a result, the gods got angry, and this world collapsed. The essence of the Seraph Project was the content of a manga. Those who haven't read it can go take a look. It's pretty good. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2370. Can I revive others? Tai Tianli's throat choked. Dustless could clearly feel that this guy's breathing had quickened. He was probably yearning for the end of the Blazing Angel project. Are you hoping that others will revive you after you die? Dustless stared straight at Tai Tianli and said in disdain. Who will revive you? Are you hoping that your son will revive you? Stop dreaming. Tai Tianli was speechless after hearing Dustless's words. Most people wanted him to die, so how could they revive him? Also, you seem to have forgotten the cause and effect. Even if you are really revived, a virus like the one from a few years ago will sweep across the world again. We might have to go through another destruction. What do you think will exist in the world after another destruction? Dustless asked casually, which made Tai Tianli speechless. The world was in a mess now, and the human race could go extinct at any time. If they were to experience another round of destruction, the human race would be completely finished. Moreover, just like what Dustless said, no one would be willing to revive him. Sigh. Tai Tianli let out a long sigh. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He lowered his head like a defeated rooster. Dustless didn't say anything when he saw this. He turned and left. Still here. Dustless saw Ran Xiaoya standing silently just as he walked out. He rubbed the girl's head subconsciously. You don't have to care about what your father said. He is a cold-blooded animal. Not only does he treat you, but he treats your brother and the rest of the Tai family the same way. I know. Ran Xiaoya nodded gently. Let's go. Dustless nodded and didn't say anything. In fact, there wasn't much to say. Xiaoya. Seeing Dustless and Ran Xiaoya, Hayakuya Yuichiro suddenly ran over. Not only him, but a few of his companions also ran over. Zoe Yuichiro Jun Tsukasa. Dustless stared at the two of them. He only took a few more glances and didn't pay attention to them anymore. No matter how great their achievements were in the future, they were nothing now. There was nothing worth thinking about. But this kid. Dustless suddenly looked towards Jun Yuesher's side. He clearly remembered that his sister, Jun Yuesher, had been secretly experimented on by the Emperor Ghost Army. In the end, she had become the Seraph of Termination. You better stay away from Xiaoya. Seeing Dustless and Ran Xiaoya standing there, the protective Yuichiro immediately pulled Ran Xiaoya away. Because of what Dustless had said before, Yuichiro had already labeled him as a dangerous and unreliable person in his heart. Xiaoya is our companion and family, Yuichiro Hayakuya said coldly, feeling an indescribable hatred for Dustless. At the same time, Junyu Shifeng, Zainu, Ichiya and Yuichiro Hayakuya stood on the same side, secretly protecting Ran Xiaoya. Tiske tisk. Seeing this, Dustless smacked his lips and said with a smile, I remember that you guys never paid attention to teamwork. Why did you guys suddenly change so fast? Is the Red Lotus group yours? But, then Dustless suddenly changed the topic and said flatly, you guys are worrying about nothing here, like caring about other people, like you. Looking at Jun Yuesher's side, Dustless said sarcastically, maybe she is experiencing great pain now. As an idiot brother, you are still standing here foolishly. Also, don't trust others, including Red Lotus. You guys are just chess pieces. You are sowing discord. Yuichiro Hayakuya retorted. In his heart, he actually trusted Red Lotus. What a hopeless idiot. Dustless was too lazy to continue talking nonsense. He turned around and left. He still had other things to deal with. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2371. After all, Dustless had massacred too many vampires. The nickname Golden Reaper was not for show. It was enough to deter too many vampires. Many of them would even run away after hearing the name Dustless. It was hard to imagine that vampires would fear a human to such an extent. This guy is very strange. You guys should be careful in the future. Looking at Dustless's back, Yuichiro did not dare to be careless. Back then, he and Dustless had escaped from the vampire city together. He had witnessed the terrifying strength of Dustless with his own eyes. In the blink of an eye, he had killed 6 or 7 vampires. His strength was beyond imagination. My sister. Jun Yuzo looked at Dustless's back in a daze. The words spoken by Dustless had affected him greatly. Jun Yuzo, don't listen to that guy's nonsense. How could Red Lotus harm your sister? You're overthinking it. Yuichiro advised. He had 100% trust in Red Lotus. He explained. That guy is just trying to drive a wedge between us. In the vampire city, Dustless was strolling around. He did not bother to hide and appeared calmly in front of the vampires. It was as if he was taking a stroll in the afternoon. Am I seeing things? A human is walking around in front of us? You must be dreaming. Damn human, are you tired of living? That's not right. This human doesn't look like a domestic animal. Look, he's not wearing a domestic animal uniform. The vampires who saw Dustless were dumbfounded. Since when did a human dare to be so arrogant? He actually dared to walk around in front of them. Did he think that they were all blind? No matter what, let's kill him together. He's just a domestic animal. A few of the patrolling vampires looked at each other and quickly surrounded Dustless. Every one of them was holding a sharp weapon in their hands. Their expressions were ferocious, and they revealed their sharp fangs. It was quite scary. It was as if they wanted to swallow Dustless alive. Get out of my way, you bastards. Dustless, who was surrounded, opened his mouth and said slowly, I was invited by your queen. She begged me to give you vampires a way out and not send yourselves to death. Human, have you gone mad? All the vampires snorted disdainfully. How could their queen flirt with Dustless, a human? What invitation? Bullsh *T. Do it, kill him. The few vampires did not waste any more words and all drew their swords to slash at him. If you want to die, Then I won't be polite. Dustless pulled out a Juruamaru, and with a light wave, a terrifying black slash swept out. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Several vampires didn't even have the chance to scream before they were killed in the blink of an eye. It had been a few years since Dustless had obtained a churro pill. He was already able to control it flexibly. He was invincible. He had killed many aristocratic progenitors. Thud 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 thud. Dustless left without the slightest reluctance. Before he came, Cthulhu had asked Dustless to sneak into the city of vampires secretly. He didn't even think about it and decisively refused. Sneak in like a rat? Not a chance. They were just vampires. As Dustless gradually infiltrated deeper into the heart of the city, more and more vampires discovered him. Seeing a human jumping in front of them, many vampires were enraged. They ran over with swords, wanting to cut Dustless into pieces. A domestic animal suddenly swaggered in front of its master. All the vampires were infuriated, but sadly, the vampires who provoked Dustless were all killed in seconds without exception. Human, stop right there. The brightly lit hall was quite familiar. Dustless had been here before and knew that he wasn't far from Cthulhu's palace. But at this time, a roadblock blocked his way. This person was slightly different from the other vampires. He had blue eyes that shone like gems. His blonde hair was dazzling under the light. It was worth mentioning that this young man looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. He had a calm and steady aura, completely different from the vampires he encountered before. He was much stronger. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. When Dustless saw him, the image of a blonde young man appeared in his mind. Michael of the 100 Knights? Dustless's lips curled up. He looked at the cold young man and teased. What's so complicated about changing from a human to a vampire? Express your feelings, young man. You know me. Hearing this, 100 Knights, Michael's cold little face was obviously stunned. He coldly asked, Human, who are you? This change is really fast. Every time you say human. Didn't you hate vampires in the past? Now that you've become a vampire, your stance has changed? Little brat, your will is really not firm. But it's undeniable that humans are really annoying sometimes. Dustless spoke frankly. Soon after, he asked faintly, Whose blood did you drink to become a vampire? You know, quite a lot. 100 Knights. Michael frowned as he looked at Dustless. He felt that the person in front of him was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. Clang. 100 Knights. Michael was too lazy to talk nonsense. He unsheathed his sword. After becoming a vampire for a few years, he had completely changed. He started to hate the human race. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 100 Knights. Michael turned into a gust of wind and rushed over. The large sword in his hand slashed towards Dustless's head without hesitation. He was full of vigor and didn't show any mercy. Clang, clang, clang. A series of explosions sounded and the blade's attack stopped. Without a doubt, Dustless received the attack. His method was very simple. He directly grabbed Michael's sword. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2372. 100 Knights. Michael looked at Dustless in a daze. Those two fingers were like two giant fingers that could reach the sky. They were tightly clamping Michael's sword, forcing him to be unable to move. Damn it. 100 Knights. Michael was furious. He pulled out the sword with both hands. The veins on his arms were bulging. He wanted to pull it out and cut this hateful face into pieces. So weak. After dilly-dallying for a long time, 100 Knights. Michael still couldn't move Dustless. It seems like the person who turned you into a vampire wasn't Cthulhu. If you drank her blood, your strength wouldn't be so weak. Let me guess who it is. Dustless stared at 100 Knights. Michael's face for a few times. Suddenly, he thought of a man with a wicked taste. He smiled and asked, Is it the seventh ancestor freed? Bastard. This name seemed to have touched 100 Knights. Michael's heartstrings. His face suddenly turned sinister. He raised his right leg and kicked Dustless. You're asking for trouble. Dustless snorted. Looking at the side leg that was flying towards him, he slapped it. Bang. Compared to Dustless, 100 Nights Michael's strength was like a little lamb. He was easily sent flying. He fell more than 10 meters away. His face was red and swollen. "You still don't remember who I am?" Looking at 100 Nights Michael, who was lying on the ground, Dustless said calmly, "A few years ago, I walked out of here openly. It was also when 100 Nights Yuichiro escaped from here." "It's you." After being reminded by Dustless, 100 Nights Michael suddenly remembered. His eyes were like torches as he looked at Dustless. He asked excitedly, "Yuichiro, how are you? Are you injured?" "That brat." Dustless didn't hide anything and replied bluntly, "That brat is a perfect experimental subject. How do you think he will be?" "You dirty, ugly human. I want you to pay with your life." Hearing this, 100 Nights Michael immediately went berserk. His eyes were bright red and filled with a raging light. His bloodthirsty killing intent was like a wild beast that wanted to devour Dustless. "Die." Holding the great sword with both hands, 100 Nights Michael quickly attacked, stabbing towards Dustless's abdomen. Pucci. This ferocious sword pierced through Dustless's abdomen, right in the middle of his heart. However, Michael of the 100 Nights wasn't happy at all. The wound he pierced emitted a faint golden light, but no blood flowed out. Clearly, this move had no effect on Dustless. "Brat, do you think that I used that kid as a test subject?" Dustless lowered his head to look at the malevolent 100 Nights Michael, and said with contempt, "In my eyes, no matter what kind of monster he becomes in the future, he's just a little brat that's hard to look at. You're not allowed to talk about Jewel like that." 100 Nights Michael roared with an ashen face. Compared to before, his anger had weakened a lot. Hearing that Dustless didn't have any intention of doing anything to him, he was slightly relieved. "Get lost, don't block my way." Dustless was too lazy to continue talking nonsense with 100 Nights Michael. His body directly brushed past him, and he walked straight into the depths of the corridor. "Wait, I haven't allowed you to leave yet. I still want to ask about Jewel." 100 Nights Michael leaped and blocked in front of Dustless like a wall. However, Dustless still didn't care about him and continued to walk away, treating 100 Nights Michael as air. "You dare to ignore me?" 100 Nights Michael was slightly angry. A mere human dared to look down on him. Unforgivable. Swish, swish, swish. 100 Nights Michael leaped again and blocked in front of Dustless, but this time, he wasn't as lucky as before. Breaking Down level 90. The spiritual pressure in Dustless's body boiled as he glanced at 100 Nights Michael. "You're really too much of an eyesore." Black coffin. All of a sudden, a black crescent moon appeared in the void around 100 Nights Michael. It was so sharp that it could easily cut apart a palace. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. In an instant, 100 Nights Michael suffered a fatal injury. The black blade penetrated his body and tore his flesh and bones into pieces. A perfectly fine person was cut into 8 pieces in the blink of an eye. "This is just a lesson for blocking my way. The next time you dare to block me, it won't be as simple as being cut into 8 pieces. I will definitely not use such a gentle method in the future." Dustless didn't kill him. The vitality and body structure of a vampire were very special. Even if he was cut into pieces, he could still recover as long as someone helped him. In Klula's palace. That guy really knows how to cause trouble. Klulu crossed her legs and sat lazily on the throne. She tilted her head and looked like she had a headache. Just a moment ago, she received the news of the Golden Reaper, which was Dustless's invasion. She even got rid of a few hundred vampires. "Cause trouble for you? This should be the other way around. You suddenly called me over. I always feel that you're causing trouble for me." Above Klulu's head, groups of light gathered and flashed into Dustless's body. He looked at Klulu with a playful gaze and teased, "My cute livestock, why did you call me over?" Livestock. Hearing this, Klula's face trembled a few times. As the queen of vampires, she was actually called a livestock by Dustless. It was a great humiliation. But sadly, Klulu couldn't beat Dustless. Even if she was unhappy, she could only endure it. "You actually." 10,000 celestial attraction. A ferocious gravitational force exploded and Klulu, who was sitting on the throne, was instantly pulled over. Dustless raised his arm and mercilessly slapped her perky buttocks. If I don't hit you for 3 days, you want to climb the roof and destroy the tiles. Have you forgotten what I told you before? When you see me, you have to call me Master. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2373. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you, you bastard. Krulu, who was being held by Dustless, felt a stinging pain coming from her butt. Her face turned red, and at the same time, an unprecedented feeling spread throughout her body, followed by a huge burst of anger. As the queen of the vampires, she was spanked by a human again and again. How could she have any face left? It was even worse than killing Krulu. As the saying goes, a gentleman prefers death to humiliation. However, Dustless didn't buy it. He used such a crazy method to trample on Krulu's dignity. She was about to go crazy. You still dare to stare at me? Lowering his head, he found that Krulu was staring at him with eyes that wanted to eat him alive. Dustless smiled and said, "Well, it seems that you like to play more interesting and exciting things. Krulu, why don't we change the pattern, tie you to a telephone pole, take off your clothes and find dozens of..." "Enough, I was wrong, okay?" Dustless was so shameless that Krulu could only lower her head like a loser admitting defeat. She was extremely unwilling to accept this and respectfully called out, "Master." "That's more like it." Dustless smiled proudly and let go of Krulu. He lazily sat on her throne and took out a bottle of wine and a wine glass from nowhere. He ordered Krulu arrogantly, "Fill it to the brim." "This bastard wants me to pour wine? Too arrogant." Krulu exploded in anger. She was about to reject Dustless, but she saw him looking at her with a smile. Her body suddenly trembled. Even if she was unhappy, she could only follow Dustless's order. The red liquid was poured into the golden wine cup. The fragrance assailed the nostrils. Wu Chen picked up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. Then he asked unhurriedly, "My little livestock, why did you call your master? Are you going to deal with the humans? That's good. I've been annoyed with those idiots for a long time." "You are also a human, right? Don't you have any sympathy? How can you watch your own race being destroyed without doing anything?" Krulu rolled his eyes and cursed speechlessly. The human race was about to be destroyed. Why was this guy still gloating? "Little girl, your knowledge is too shallow." Dustless leaned lazily on the throne and said carelessly, "My own race? Since when were those humans my race? Just because I'm human? This logic is really unflattering." "Do what you need to do. I won't interfere," Dustless said indifferently. Then his body turned into a photon and a large amount of light floated out. It seemed like he was about to leave. "Don't worry, I still have something to say," Kelulu shouted to stop him. The light floating around Dustless's body slowly receded, and his body that was about to disappear reappeared. "Don't you want to ask what kind of relationship I have with Issei's Korea?" Seeing Dustless's casual attitude, as if he didn't care about anything, Kelulu was a little unhappy. "What's wrong with this guy? Isn't he afraid that I'll harm him? This has something to do with me?" Dustless looked at Kelulu with an indifferent expression and said very simply, "In the end, it's just you playing a boring game with a few cats and dogs. You don't have to care about my feelings, just do what you need to do." "Aren't you saying it too simply?" Kelulu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The plan she was talking about was the end of the Blazing Angel project. But when it came to Dustless, it became a boring game. That is something that can destroy the world. With a straight face, Kelulu looked at Dustless seriously. "Furthermore, the world might collapse again if you don't do it right. Aren't you afraid?" "What does it have to do with me?" Dustless couldn't be bothered to listen to Kelulu's nagging and interrupted her. His eyes were filled with endless light. "What does the life and death of the world have to do with me? He wasn't the God that Christians believed in. He wasn't great enough to love the world, nor was he the Buddha in the eyes of Buddhists. How boring would it be to save the world? Dustless wouldn't do it. You and Issei's Korea are working together, right?" After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly said, "You shouldn't say it like that. Let's be more specific. You and Red Lotus's girlfriend, Kasumi Hiru, are in a cooperative relationship. But that guy seems to have become a ghost. Now he seems to be lodging in Ike's Red Lotus's ghost curse weapon. You even know this? Kellula's mouth opened wide in shock. She looked at Dustless in disbelief. Her heart felt like it was going through a storm, and couldn't calm down for a long time. Looking at his clear eyes, she suddenly felt scared. This kind of secret cooperation was only known by 3 people. Kellulu herself, Issei's Korea herself, and Issei's Korea. Where did Dustless get this information? Who do you want to resurrect with that kind of thing? Dustless stared at Kellulu and said bluntly, the essence of the end of the Blazing Angel project is to resurrect the dead. You want to resurrect someone in order to destroy the world? To be honest, I am very curious. Kellulu was silent. She didn't know how to face Dustless. This guy was too mysterious. Dustless knew all the secrets that should be known by heaven and earth. Anyway, I am bored. Let me guess. Dustless closed his eyes and remained silent for a long time. Kellulu also looked over and curiously looked at Dustless. She really didn't know where this guy got the ability to predict the future. You want to resurrect Yashira Tsupersi, right? No, that was his name 1,000 years ago. Now that he has turned into a ghost, his name is Ajiramaru. Wu Chen said with a smile. His tone was light, but this short sentence made Kellulu very tired. His whole body was in a bad state. Are you really human? Kellula's beautiful eyes widened several times. She looked at Dustless's naughty smile, and then realized something. She quickly changed her words. It is Master. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2374. At this moment, Krulu felt like dying. The high and mighty vampire queen was actually forced into such a sorry state by a human. She even had to address a human as her master. The reputation of the vampires was completely lost by her. It was worth mentioning that Krulu was the 3rd ancestor of the vampires, a true noble. But then again, where did this guy find out about these secrets? Did Akira Ikase tell him? That's impossible. Akira Ikase doesn't even know about my brother's matters. This is too strange. Her beautiful eyes stared at Dustless without moving. Krulu found that she couldn't see through Dustless anymore. This guy was full of secrets. The more she looked at him, the more she couldn't help but fall in love with him. If you stare at me like that, I'll feel embarrassed. Dustless's annoying voice fell into Krulu's ears. I know that I'm ridiculously handsome. It's normal for you to fall in love with me. But no matter what, you're still the vampire queen. Little brat, you need to be more reserved. Krulu's pretty face turned black. She was furious. Can't this guy be more serious? But there's one thing I need to remind you. Dustless looked at Krulu and warned. You also know that I'm the general of the Emperor Ghost Army. I know better than you what kind of person Akira Ikase is. Cooperating with her is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. Don't get bitten in the back. Moreover, you are the queen of the vampires. If those nobles find out. No, it seems that they already know that Fried knows that you are keeping the Seraph of Termination in captivity. Dustless warned earnestly. That Fried was not a good person. Don't worry. I've already taught him a lesson. That guy won't dare to talk nonsense unless he doesn't want to live anymore. Krulu sneered. You think too highly of yourself. At the same time, you've also underestimated that man. Dustless shook his head and explained. Do you understand? A poisonous snake will only release its precious venom when it's sure that it has its prey. And, Dustless suddenly took out his ghost curse weapon. The green blade made the weapon look very nice. This is my ghost curse weapon. Do you know what it's called? When Krulu heard this, his gaze was also drawn over. When he saw the straight saber, for some reason his emotions trembled. He felt a strange sense of nostalgia. Looking at Krulu's expression, Dustless faintly smiled and explained. His name is Ajiramaru. Yujun who beat you up like this? On the other side, Fried also discovered that 100 Knights Michael's body had been chopped into 8 pieces. His body had been cut into several pieces. Fortunately, the person who chopped him up didn't kill him, so his body could still be pieced back together. 100 Nights. Michael opened his eyes and looked at Fried's bewitching face. He was extremely conflicted. Without a doubt, Fried had killed all of his family members apart from Yuichiro Hayakuya. Originally, both sides were irreconcilable enemies, but because of Fried, Roland had become a vampire. Although Fried had only used Roland, in a way, Fried had saved Roland's life. Therefore, every time he saw Fried, 100 Nights. Michael felt extremely helpless. I'm curious. What kind of person beat you up like this? In this city of vampires, it seems that only Krulu can do this. How did you offend him? Fried put 100 Nights. Michael's body back together, blinked his eyes and asked curiously. It's not him. 100 Nights. Michael's face was gloomy. He opened his mouth and spat out a person that made Fried's expression change drastically. It's Dustless, the guy with the nickname Golden Reaper. So it's him. Hearing this, Fried's careless face suddenly froze. Obviously, he was also extremely apprehensive of Dustless. Don't say too much about this matter. Only the two of us can understand. Why? 100 Nights. Michael frowned and said in a deep voice, if we tell the other upper ancestors, there will definitely be someone stronger to deal with Dustless. Even Krulu will be killed. That guy has an inextricable relationship with Krulu. Haven't you always wanted the ruling power of Japan? You're right. Fried nodded undeniably. He liked Krulu's power. However, before this, you seem to have forgotten an important matter, Michael. Important matter? Hearing this, 100 Nights. Michael was rather confused. He didn't understand what this guy was talking about. No matter how wonderful something is, you have to be alive to enjoy it. Do you think that the two of us can still live after offending Krulu? Moreover, that guy has an even more terrifying general of the Emperor Ghost Army behind him. His strength is far beyond Krulu's. Speaking of this, Fried broke out in cold sweat. His face was filled with apprehension. The scene of him being crushed by Dustless back then was unforgettable. It was just a glance, but it was like a startled swan that scared him to the point that he lost all his fighting strength. It might be laughable to say that the dignified seventh ancestor was so frightened by a mere human that he almost peed his pants. However, this was the undeniable truth. That was why Fried had been obedient all these years. He knew that Dustless and Krulu had some kind of relationship, but he didn't dare to announce it. Perhaps if he announced it, Krulu would be finished. However, he would definitely end up in a worse state than Krulu. Looking at Fried's solemn expression, Michael of 100 Nights couldn't help but feel curious. Just what kind of encounter did Fried experience to frighten him to such an extent? He didn't dare to cross the line. This wasn't like him at all. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2375. Michael couldn't help but stare blankly at Fried in front of him. He was scared out of his wits by Dustless. Dustless was like a nightmare to him. The calm and confident Fried in the past seemed to be an act. And now, this timid Fried had refreshed Michael's understanding of him, as if this was the real him. All in all, you can provoke anyone, but provoking Dustless is the same as courting death. Fried emphasized, warning Michael not to act rashly. He knew how terrifying Dustless was. Not to mention Michael, even Krulu as the third ancestor, didn't dare to challenge Dustless. In fact, she was even humble in front of Dustless. Could it be? Suddenly recalling something, Fried asked in a deep voice, "Did you offend that guy? That's why he cut you into 8 pieces?" "That's right. I did provoke him." Michael nodded slightly. "You've misunderstood." Fried shook his head. He didn't mean to hurt Michael's feelings. "If you really provoked him, I can tell you clearly that all the vampires in this city will be buried with you." At the same time, time passed quickly. Dustless and Krulu were in dead silence. "You tamed this cursed weapon?" Krulu's expression was extremely complicated. She stared at the green saber in front of her. No wonder she felt an inexplicable connection with it. It turned out that this was Ajurumaru, her elder brother. "He's already a ghost now." Dustless added, "You should know what a ghost is, right?" When vampires are deprived of blood, they will degenerate into ghosts. Your elder brother is such an existence now. In a sense, he isn't dead. Kula didn't deny it. She just stood there quietly. Dustless's words were too big, and she needed time to digest them. Actually, you don't have anything to worry about. Besides, it's useless for you to worry. Dustless continued. This is fate. Your elder brother was turned into a vampire, and from a vampire he became a ghost. Only when he came to me can he be at peace. It was worth mentioning that many vampires were originally humans. For example, Michael turned into a vampire after drinking the blood of other vampires. Some ancestor vampires were also humans at first, but after drinking the blood of superior vampires, they evolved into vampires. In short, I've said all that needs to be said. What you do next is up to you. Dustless explained casually. But be careful of Akira's Akira. No matter what kind of secret plan Cruelu and Ike's Red Lotus had, Dustless was too lazy to poke his nose into it. As long as it didn't hinder him, he was fine with it. He just wanted to live a carefree life. Those words just now could be considered as a warning to Cruelu. After leaving Cruelu, Dustless didn't rush back to the King Ghost Army's territory. Instead, he wandered around the ruined city with nothing to do. Ever since the large-scale destruction of the human race, the once bustling cities had now become rotting scrap metal. There were abandoned buildings everywhere, dilapidated beyond repair. What a killjoy! Dustless shook his head slightly. His heart couldn't help but feel empty. It seemed like he was the only one in this huge city. Even if there were people, they were the vampires and John's 4 horsemen. It was worth mentioning that John's 4 horsemen seemed to have been cursed by God. They didn't attack vampires but humans instead. Boom boom boom. At that moment, a building not far away suddenly collapsed. Dustless frowned. He could vaguely hear a clang 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 sound. After living in this world for many years, Dustless knew that it was the sound of weapons scraping against each other. Interesting. Anyway, he had nothing to do. Out of curiosity, Wu Chun strode over. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. In an underground ruin, several members of the King Ghost Army were surrounded. This group of people looked quite miserable. Some of them were sweating profusely. Looking carefully, they were surrounded by vampires. They were like turtles in a jar. Dustless recognized these people. They were Ran Xiaoya's team. You bastard, I told you not to save people so easily. Why didn't you listen to my orders? The blonde girl with a ponytail asked angrily. She was called Mitsuya. She was scolding Hayakuya Yuichiro angrily. Just now their team had saved a little girl. Because of that, they were surrounded. The little girl had lied. There were supposed to be 7 vampires, but she said there were 6. As a result, Ran Xiaoya's team was surrounded. It's useless for you to say anything now. We're surrounded. Hayakuya Yuichiro said with a straight face. He looked at Mitsuya fearlessly. What he meant was, do whatever you want. It's too late. You bastard. Mitsuya was so angry that she couldn't speak. She glared at Hayakuya Yuichiro. If it weren't for the fact that they were surrounded by strong enemies, she really wanted to beat this dumb kid up. During this time, Mitsuya objected to saving the little girl. She wasn't a new recruit like Hayakuya Yuichiro. She knew that this could be a trap set by the vampires. She tried to stop him, but Hayakuya Yuichiro refused to listen. He decisively led everyone into the trap. As a result, they were now in such a difficult situation. They were a team of 5, but there were 7 vampires. They were at a disadvantage. As for the other members, Jun Tsukasa Shifeng, Zhao Yuichi, and the team leader, Ran Xiaoya, they were all frowning. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2376. From the perspective of teamwork, Hayakuya Yuichiro's actions were reckless. He did not care about the safety of his teammates and put the whole team in a difficult situation. This was a big taboo. However, from the perspective of human nature, Hayakuya Yuichiro did not do anything wrong. Humans are not plants. How can they be heartless? Moreover, as a member of the Emperor's ghost army, how can they watch the vampires kill their comrades without doing anything? Obviously, this was impossible. No one could accept it. Therefore, Sasuya Yuichiro did not blame Hyakuya Yuichiro. It was understandable. He was just a little impulsive. Yuichiro and Miyoshi, now is not the time to quarrel. We might be annihilated by this group of vampires at any time. So please stop. Sasuya Yuichiro advised, but her eyes were looking at the vampires to prevent them from launching a sneak attack. Just domestic animals. You have guts. You dare to fight among yourselves when you are about to die. Are you looking down on us? The vampires surrounding Sasuya Yuichiro and the others mocked them. They looked at Sasuya Yuichiro and the others with disdain. Humans will always be humans. Stupid and ignorant. At this time, you still dare to fight among yourselves. Your dirty nature is disgusting. What did you say? Hearing this, Hyakuya Yuichiro was furious. He looked at the vampire angrily and unsheathed the long sword in his hand. Clang. A dark green blade appeared, revealing its sharpness. Just looking at it would cause one's eyes to hurt. It was not difficult to see that this was definitely a divine weapon. Even if Aijiramaru was taken away by Dustless, Hyakuya Yuichiro still got a good Black Ghost series Ghost Curse weapon. Go to hell, damn vampire. Staring at the vampire's face, Yuichiro Hyakuya roared. Holding the sword with both hands, he leaped forward and chopped at the hateful face. Every time Hyakuya Yuichiro saw a vampire, he could not help but think of his dead family members. Especially the face of Hyakuya Michael, which appeared in his mind and tormented him. Ha ha ha. Idiot, you fell for it. Seeing Yuichiro pouncing on another vampire, the rest of the vampires' faces lit up. They looked at Yuichiro mockingly. This kid was really an idiot. He couldn't be provoked at all. Idiot, excellent, come back quickly. There's a flaw in our formation. Seeing that Yuichiro Hyakuya was like a ferocious tiger coming out of its cage and pouncing over with unstoppable momentum, Sasuke Xiaoya's pretty face was covered with dark clouds. She hurriedly reprimanded Yuichiro Hyakuya to come back and maintain the formation. The Moon Ghost unit of the Emperor Ghost Army was usually a team of 5. They formed a special formation that could both attack and defend. In a dangerous situation, their chances of survival would also increase. However, if one person was missing, they would be full of openings. This is our chance. Let's go. These vampires seemed to be quite familiar with the Moon Phantoms. When they discovered a flaw in the formation, they immediately launched a fierce attack. Clang clang clang. This group of vampires was quite smart. They waved their swords and slashed at Sasuke and the rest. The situation instantly became chaotic. After all, these people were just children. Moreover, they were all new recruits. They were definitely not as good as these experienced vampires. Although they were quite strong, they had already been separated. It was no different from a fool's dream to continue maintaining the team. Moreover, the vampires had an obvious advantage in terms of numbers. Other than that, they also had a large number of captive humans. At the crucial moment, they could use them as hostages. No matter how one looked at it, Sasuke's team did not have an advantage. Bang bang bang. At the same time, Yuichiro Hyakuya was also fighting with a vampire. This kid's strength was indeed extraordinary. He was able to suppress the vampire to a miserable state. Every time he swung his sword, the vampire would be forced to retreat. This damned monster. Why is he so strong? Is he really a child? The vampire who was being suppressed was aghast. To be suppressed by a child, he felt that he had lost all his face. To him it was a great humiliation, but he was powerless to fight back. Go to hell. Yuichiro Hyakuya's eyes were red. He was enjoying the pleasure of trampling on the vampire. He raised his right arm and waved his sword fiercely. The strength was as strong as the giant clan. One had to admit that although hatred was a negative side, it was sometimes a good thing. At least, it had become the motivation for Yuichiro Hyakuya to become stronger. Bang ka ka ka. The vampire immediately used his sword to block Yuichiro Hyakuya's attack. Although he managed to block the destruction of the sword, his weapon was also broken. It was enough to show how strong Yuichiro Hayakuya was. Damned monster. The vampire suddenly had an idea. Looking at the imprisoned humans around him, a sinister smile appeared on his face. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Without saying a word, the vampire turned into a shadow and grabbed the throat of a child at lightning speed. He threatened Yuichiro Hayakuya. Put down your weapon, or I will kill him. Despicable. Are all vampires trash like you? You can't beat me, so you use others to threaten me. Shameless. Yuichiro Hayakuya cursed. He had never seen such a shameless person. Are you going to put it down or not? And your companions? The vampire didn't care. He smiled arrogantly and said proudly, all of you, put down your weapons. Otherwise, we will kill this group of livestock. Your mission will be considered a failure. I have never seen such a shameless person. Yuichiro Hayakuya and the others were furious. The vampire was indeed extremely sinister. This is interesting. How are you going to choose? On the top of the ruined building, Dustless looked at the few people fighting on the ground. He gradually became interested. He really wanted to see what kind of decision Yuichiro Hayakuya would make. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2377. Only in moments of life and death would one do something unexpected. This was the best time to see through a person's true nature. Throw away your weapons or else. The vampire's eyes turned cold, and he snapped the neck of a child. He then said with a bloodthirsty smile, don't doubt my words. This is just the beginning. Do you understand? If you resist, I will kill all of these animals. Plop. Immediately after, the vampire threw the corpse to the side without looking back, as if he was throwing away trash. In this world where human lives were as cheap as grass, it was normal for people to die. People died every day, especially to the vampires. What were humans? It was just the value of livestock. UB** starred. Yuichiro Hayakuya's face turned pale as he looked at the body on the ground. The child's eyes were wide open as if he was unwilling to die. I won't be fooled. Yuichiro Hayakuya exhaled heavily as if he had thought it through. He then said coldly, if I put down my weapons, my companions will die too. I can't ignore the lives of my companions because of other people's lives. What a hypocrite. Didn't you say that you wanted to protect these animals? What about now? Humans are really shameless. You change your attitude faster than flipping a book. The other vampires were full of contempt. However, Yuichiro Hayakuya seemed to have sealed his emotions. He was expressionless and just looked at them coldly. They won't die in vain. As a reward, I will tear you vampires into pieces to avenge them. Yuichiro Hayakuya's face was ferocious as if he was possessed by an evil spirit. This is so boring. I was so excited to watch it. The ending is so disappointing. Seeing this scene, Wu-chun, who was silently observing, shook his head and leisurely turned around to leave. He originally thought that Yuichiro Hayakuya would sacrifice himself to save the other humans, but it seemed that he was wrong. Although Yuichiro Hayakuya was rather simple and ignorant, he was not stupid. Come out. Dustless had only taken a few steps when he suddenly looked up at the blue sky. His voice was as light as a breeze. Akatsuki Ikanase, if you continue to hide in your turtle shell, I don't mind treating you like a vampire. That would be very interesting. These words are really scary. A languid voice suddenly rang out from one of the walls behind the ruins. Raising her head, Ikanase Korea rubbed her head in pain and sighed. As expected of the Golden Reaper that the vampires fear. His keen perception is truly terrifying. I thought I had hidden myself well enough. You didn't come here just to catch up with me, did you? Dustless asked faintly. You've hidden it well enough. It's just that you're full of flaws in front of me. It's just that it's good enough because you're purely fantasizing. It's extremely vulgar. Hearing Dustless's words, Ikanase Korea felt rather awkward. However, she was a thick-skinned person. That only lasted for a moment before she quickly returned to normal. Of course I'm not here to catch up with you. The vampires are about to launch an all-out war against the humans. I'm here to ask you about your stance. Ikane's Korea went straight to the point. As for the trivial matters of Yuichiro Hayakuya and the others, Ikane's Korea did not interfere. If they could not even deal with those small vampire minions, then it would be better for them to die as soon as possible. My stance. Hearing this, Dustless fixed his gaze on Ikane's Korea's head and calmly asked, "That's a strange way to put it. I am the general of the Imperial Ghost Army. Of course, I'm on the side of the humans. What other stance can I have?" "That's not necessarily true." Ikane's Korea stared straight at Dustless. No one knew about his past, but she knew a little about it. At the very least, Ikane's Korea had some clues about what Dustless had done in the vampire city. "You suspect that I will side with the vampires? What a joke. A thief trying to catch a thief." Dustless focused his gaze on Ikane's Korea and coldly said, "Also before that, you better be clear about the difference in status between us. I am the general. What is your military rank?" After saying that, Dustless ignored Ikane's Korea and turned to leave. The meaning behind his words was simple. "You have no right to talk to me. I heard that you went to the vampire's territory and caused quite a ruckus." Ikane's Korea suddenly looked at Dustless and said, Ikane's Korea was inextricably linked to the vampires. Naturally, she had received the news that Dustless had caused a huge ruckus in the vampire's territory. "I was just bored and went for a stroll." Dustless did not even look at Ikane's Korea. His footsteps did not slow down. Gradually, Ikane's Korea's eyes caught up with him. "Stroll." The corners of Ikane's Korea's mouth twitched. She felt depressed. A human going for a stroll in the vampire's territory? What kind of joke was this? Did he have a death wish? In Ikane's Korea's opinion, Dustless was deliberately trying to brush her off. He must be up to something big. This fellow, just what is he after? Ikane's Korea was confused. She looked at Dustless's back, and her mind fell into a dead end. She had studied Dustless for many years. However, she had never been able to figure out what kind of character this fellow was. She could not even figure out what his ambitions and goals were. However, no matter what, as long as you dare to stand in my way, I will not let you off so easily. Ikane's Korea stared deeply at Dustless's back and swore to herself. If Dustless were to find out about this, he would definitely ridicule her for overestimating herself. However, Ikane's Korea dared to say such words because she was confident in herself. In her eyes, the blazing angel of termination was an invincible existence. Her research with the Twilight Tribe had reached its final stage. The blazing angel could be put to use at any time. This might be her biggest trump card against Dustless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 rewards plus update, 1,000 rating votes plus update, 500 rating votes plus update. Chapter 2378. The Blazing Angel Project had once destroyed the world, and humans were unable to resist it. Therefore, Haine's Hongren also had high hopes for that thing, thinking that it could defeat Dustless. Although it was a little childish to have such thoughts, it was normal. After all, no one knew Dustless's origin. At the same time, Dustless continued to move forward. The defense of Shinjuku was about to begin, and both sides would fight to the death. Since he had nothing to do anyway, he might as well go and take a look. In the desolate city, there was obviously a big battle. Black smoke was still burning, and many vampires could be seen everywhere, as well as the corpses of the King Ghost Army. There was no doubt that the King Ghost Army had been defeated. The streets and alleys had become a paradise for vampires. During this time, many vampires had even come to surround Dustless. "Look, there's another human. Let's kill him together." "You idiot, don't you see who that is? The nightmare of us vampires. I remember that his name is Dustless, and his nickname is the Golden Reaper. He's the only general in the King Ghost Army. So what? I heard that the reward for killing him is great." "Idiot, even if the reward is great, you need to be alive to take it. Anyway, the higher-ups said that we can run away without fighting if we see this guy. We won't be blamed." Dustless swaggered into the city, causing many vampires to look at each other. A group of vampires who could not resist the temptation went to provoke him. But the result was very tragic. They were killed instantly. However, some vampires who had heard of Dustless's reputation decisively chose to ignore him. This was because there was an order that they would not be blamed even if they ran away to avoid punishment. Over the years, Dustless's reputation was too well known, and he was feared by countless vampires. Moreover, he had a habit that everyone knew. He was often alone, and he usually traveled alone. The word companion was completely opposite to him, and he was completely different from the other King Ghost Army members. It was precisely because of this that a noble once led thousands of vampires to besiege Dustless when he was alone. The result was shocking, and the vampires were all wiped out. Therefore, various nicknames of Dustless spread. At least you know what's good for you. Dustless naturally sensed many vampires, but found that they did not provoke or meddle in other people's business. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Although Dustless said that he was a human, that was only on the surface. He had always regarded himself as a neutral. Neither vampires nor humans were good people. Sometimes, when he saw vampires and Emperor Ghost Army fighting, Dustless was too lazy to intervene. It's really as strange as the rumors say. At this moment, a slightly surprised voice was heard. Dustless stopped in his tracks. Not far in front of him, a vampire suddenly walked out. From his attire, one could tell that he was a noble. Scram! Dustless spoke indifferently without even glancing at the man. Hearing this, many vampires were speechless. This fellow had barged into the vampire's lair alone, and even told the vampire nobles to scram. He was simply tired of living, treating his life as a joke. This temper is just as the rumors say, arrogant. The vampire who blocked Dustless's path laughed. It would have been better if he did not speak. Once he spoke, he revealed two sharp teeth, looking rather eerie. However, to everyone's surprise, the vampire didn't get angry despite being looked down upon by Dustless. Instead, he introduced himself politely. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Corey Justford, the 13th ancestor, and also, didn't you hear me when I asked you to scram? Dustless could not be bothered to listen to his nonsense. He showed an expression that said it was for his own good. I asked you to scram for your own good. Otherwise, I'll have another vampire noble dead soul under my hands. Gulp, gulp. Many vampires looked at each other, choking with sobs. A human intruding into the vampire's territory alone, and still being so arrogant. This really refreshed their understanding of him. Don't be in such a hurry. I'm sorry for wasting your time. I'm also here for business. Corey was not angry. He had long heard of Dustless's temper. You're not even half as smart as Freed. I don't think he ordered you to come. That kid was like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw me. I didn't need to say anything, and he would have run for his life. Dustless muttered to himself as if he was narrating a trivial matter. However, the other vampires were sweating profusely. A mouse seeing a cat? This description was too exaggerated. Forget it. Just say it. I'm bored anyway. Remember to get me a chair. My waist is not good. It gets sore after listening to people talk for a long time. Dustless waved his hand and looked like he was all ears. Will this guy die if he doesn't be so arrogant? Many vampires complained collectively. How could a human be so arrogant? As if he was a high and mighty master. There were even some vampires who were yelling in their hearts, Mr. Livestock. But what surprised them was that in the face of Dustless's arrogant words, Corey's expression did not change. The corners of his mouth even curled up slightly, and he seemed to be very calm. This guy seems to be up to something. Dustless's gaze suddenly deepened. He didn't feel Corey's hostility and surprisingly tolerated his humiliation. This showed that he definitely had an ulterior motive. All of you back off. Looking at the vampires around him, Corey's gaze suddenly turned piercingly cold. A fight between me and this guy isn't something you can handle. Also, listen to him. Hurry up and get me a chair. Upon hearing his words, the vampires felt like their minds were about to explode. Is this a fight? Does he need to get someone a chair for a fight? This is obviously the rhythm of kneeling and begging for mercy. Some of the vampires had even imagined the scene of Corey kneeling on one knee. P.S. I'm back in my hometown. I can't update steadily while in the car. Please forgive me. Chapter 2379. The weather was chilly and the air was a little humid. The cold wind blew gently, but it was exceptionally bone-piercing. Strange, it was fine just now. Why is it suddenly so cold? The vampires were confused and couldn't help but look at each other. Their race was rather special. Cold. They had never felt such a simple feeling before. After all, the excellent physique of the vampires far surpassed that of humans. But now they felt a bone-piercing chill. This was really strange. Oh, this is really amazing. On the other side, Corey's eyes widened in shock. He raised his head and saw a huge crack on the ground that extended all the way to Dustless's feet. That skinny body was like a natural barrier that no one was able to cross. Let me reevaluate your IQ. Dustless sat lazily on the chair and rubbed his chin in boredom. Corey, although you look like a frivolous and half-hearted man on the surface, in reality, I'm very smart, right? Corey smiled and continued. Dustless shook the thumb of his right hand and said coldly, in reality, you are really stupid. You want to sneak up on me with your level? Just a moment ago, the moment Dustless sat on the chair, Corey suddenly launched a sneak attack on him. The move was so powerful that even the ground was cut open, creating a huge and terrifying abyss. However, the sad thing was that it had no effect on Dustless. That seemingly powerful slash was directly caught by his bare hands, and was easily crushed like a fruit. You said I'm stupid? Corey frowned and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Isn't that so? Challenging someone who can crush you. If this isn't stupid, what is? Looking into Corey's blood-red eyes, Dustless asked indifferently. At the same time, his hand suddenly grabbed forward. 10,000 heavenly attraction. Boom, boom, boom. A violent gravitational force erupted instantly, distorting space and time and destroying the land. A large number of buildings were pulled over. That pair of slender white hands seemed to be the hand of God that could not be defied. The gravitational force covered everything indiscriminately, and no matter could escape its fate. Is this a move that humans can control? Corey cursed loudly. At this moment, his body was also floating uncontrollably. He found it difficult to maintain his balance with his four limbs and floated in the air like a puppet. Moreover, he was constantly approaching Dustless. As long as Dustless moved his fingers slightly, his body would sway along with it. This feeling was especially sullen and helpless. He had lost control of his body all of a sudden. Dustless could control Crowley however he wished. Sword, drink my blood. At this critical moment, Corey decisively used all of his power, the sword at his waist suddenly piercing into his palm, the two becoming one. From this moment onwards, he displayed his full strength. The blade that was suffused with silver light also turned blood red. Its luster was as demonic as blood. Swish, swish, swish. He abruptly waved his hand, and a huge crimson beam of light shot toward him. TSK. You barely have some skill. Dustless chuckled and ignored the slash coming at him. He looked at Crowley calmly and said, You're the 13th ancestor, aren't you? However, the strength you're displaying now reminds me of someone. Do you know who it is? Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, Crowley's full-powered attack landed on Dustless's body. It was also in this split second that a layer of visible materialized energy swept out of Dustless's body and revolved around him tightly like a water bucket protecting Dustless. Crowley's slash was completely absorbed by this golden energy. What the hell is this? Crowley looked at Dustless in shock and bewilderment. The layer of light outside his body was similar to an enlarged version of human bones. It was so sturdy that it was difficult to break through. His full-powered attack was like hitting a diamond. Forget about breaking it, it did not even leave a mark. There's nothing to be surprised about. This is my Kinsisanu. Although it's incomplete, it's not something you can break. Come to think of it, I used this move to destroy thousands of vampires back then. Dustless's eyes were somewhat empty, as if he had sunk into his memories and muttered to himself. Get over here. The big hand suddenly grabbed again, and the gravitational force erupting from the palm was even denser. Crowley's body disappeared in an instant, and only a black shadow could be seen pouncing toward Dustless. Pay some price for your stupidity. The moment he approached, Dustless suddenly sent out a kick. Bang! Crowley only felt that his face had received a fatal attack. The bones in his face were shattered with a caw-caw-caw sound. Dustless stepped on his face, causing him to grimace in pain. Spare me. If I knew you were so terrifying, I wouldn't have dared to come to a place like Japan. Crowley, whose cheek had been stepped on, laughed bitterly at himself. His words were a little muffled because Dustless had also stepped on his mouth. There's always a price to pay for provoking others. I'm already being merciful by not killing you. As one of the ancestors of the vampires, you should know how many nobles have died in my hands. But you still came to provoke me. What does this mean? Dustless was not in a hurry. His tone paused for a while, and then he said unhurriedly, "This situation can only mean two things. Either you're really tired of living, or you're deliberately approaching me. Right, let's talk about that question again. On the surface, you're the 13th ancestor, but your true strength is far beyond this level. Compared to that guy Freed, whose blood did you drink? I think it's that second ancestor. I think he's called Saito. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2380. Saito. To many people, this was an extremely unfamiliar name. Even some vampires did not know him. The number of people who knew about this person could be counted with one's fingers. It was worth mentioning that Saito had retired from the position of the second primogenitor several hundred years ago. It was normal for people to not know about him. However, Crowley was one of the few people who knew about Saito. Several hundred years ago, during the Middle Ages, Crowley was still a human. Surprisingly, he was also a knight. At that time, he drank a special blood that caused his body to undergo a qualitative change. Because of that, he became a vampire. The person who gave him the blood was Freed. However, the blood was not his. Instead, it was the blood of the second primogenitor, a man named Saito. It was worth mentioning that Freed also drank Saito's blood. The two of them could be considered brothers. However, regardless of whether it was Freed or Crowley, neither of them had any good impression of Saito. They wanted nothing more than to get rid of him. Ayaya, you are truly incredible. You even know about such a major secret. How terrifying. Crowley said casually as he carelessly rubbed his head. He looked very frivolous, but in reality, his heart was raging like a storm, filled with shock and astonishment. This sort of thing, who told him about it? Was it Freed? That shouldn't be the case. Although that guy is unreliable, he at least understands the severity of certain things being exposed. He will definitely be killed. Crowley scratched his head and pondered. Suddenly, he felt as if the world no longer revolved around vampires. What do you mean by waiting for the beginning? Since when have humans become so smart? Furthermore, it was such a secretive matter. It seemed that other than him and Freed, no one else knew that he had drunk Saita's blood. Everyone else thought that Crowley had drunk Freed's blood. But where did Dustless obtain this information? This was too puzzling. Seeing your confused expression, it means that what I said is true. Dustless's tone was as calm as water. There was not the slightest fluctuation in his voice. No one could tell what he was thinking. There is one thing that I must admit. You are truly terrifying. Crowley took a deep look at Dustless. He felt as if he was looking at flowers through a fog. He discovered that he was unable to see through this person. This person of unknown origin, powerful strength, and capable of suppressing all nobles, and a human at that, was undoubtedly terrifying. Especially if one offended him. Looks like you have nothing to say. Dustless suddenly stood up and moved his bones a little. A crackling sound came out, giving people the feeling that he was about to beat someone up. Damn it, I can't afford to offend this guy. Raising his head abruptly to look at Dustless, Crowley was filled with regret. Especially when he heard the caw-caw-caw sound from the handshake, he broke out in cold sweat. He felt as though he had shot himself in the foot. Buzz buzz buzz. In that instant, Dustless abruptly raised his right foot, condensing a huge flash of light and aiming at Crowley's body. A blazing edge of destruction immediately spread out. Light speed, hold on. Seeing that Dustless was about to launch a kick at him, Crowley hurriedly waved his hand to stop Dustless. He hurriedly explained in a loud voice. To tell you the truth, it was Freed who sent me to look for you. It was all a misunderstanding. Please don't take it to heart. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Hearing that, the light that was ignited by Wu Chen's right foot slowly extinguished. Wu Chen frowned slightly and fixed his gaze on Corey's face. He asked, he should understand my strength. It's impossible for him to allow you to provoke me. You're just asking for trouble. Yes, that's what he told me. But, Crowley's tone sank slightly as he said solemnly. However, this is a serious matter. I still can't completely trust you humans. Moreover, I also have doubts about your strength. That's why. Sorry to offend you. At this point, Crowley's tone was incomparably awkward. He scratched his head in embarrassment. He wanted to test Dustless, but the result was too horrible to look at. He was crushed by that terrifying absolute strength. I think there's too big of a misunderstanding. After a moment of silence, Dustless slowly said, First of all, although you're a vampire, your essence is still human. It's really laughable to say that you don't trust humans. Secondly, Dustless's tone softened, his gaze unwavering as he looked at Crowley. I think you're mistaken. From what you said, you want to discuss something with me. Did I agree? The next question is, Dustless's tranquil gaze instantly turned awe-inspiring, revealing a murderous intent. Test my strength? Yes, but I forgot to tell you that you'll have to pay a price. Boom boom boom. As his voice faded, the extinguished light under Dustless's feet flashed again. Moreover, it was even brighter and more ear-piercing than before. The flash was as terrifyingly hot as the sun. This bastard. Upon seeing this, Crowley's pupils shrunk abruptly as he sensed an unprecedented crisis. Without looking back, he lifted his head and retreated at the fastest speed in his life. Although Crowley's reaction was extremely fast, he was still a step too late. After all, the speed of light was too fast. Compared to the speed of light, the speed of a vampire was simply not worth mentioning. He was so weak that he was instantly engulfed by the destructive light wave. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. The golden light beam tore through the horizon and pounced straight at Crowley's body. Intense, blazing flames instantly soared into the air and burned wildly in the atmosphere. Due to the overly ferocious flames, even the sky turned red. The oxygen and moisture in the atmosphere evaporated rapidly. It could be suffocating at any time. It was extremely dangerous. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2381. Gulp. Gulp. Seeing such a scene, Corey could not help but jump in fright. He had never seen such an exaggerated scene before. It had even subverted his understanding of the world. It was no wonder that Corey's performance was so exaggerated. It looked like a simple kick, but the destructive power it unleashed was beyond imagination. I know I'm wrong, please let me go. Helpless, Crowley could only beg for mercy. His tone was humble and full of pleading, completely losing the noble character of a superior vampire. This submissive begging tone was more like that of a prisoner. Lord Corey, fight him to the death. Some of the vampires who could not stand it any longer roared, endless anger brewing in their words. Since when could a lowly human step on the heads of vampires and flaunt their prowess? Heavens, this is too much. However, Corey's performance was truly unflattering, even shameful. They did not dare to swing their swords. Stop, let's talk things over. Corey hid behind a pile of rubble and shouted at Dustless. Sadly, he was ignored. Dustless did not even look at Corey from start to finish, as if he was a pawn that was not worth mentioning. Boom, boom, boom. The thick beam of light blasted onto Crowley's body, followed by an explosion. Endless shockwaves spread out, blowing the ground bare. Even the sand and stones underground were blown up, exposing the moist depths of the ground to the scorching sun. As for Corey, you shouldn't be dead, right? The power of that kick was shocking, but vampires are a special race. It seems that only ghost curse equipment can destroy you. Dustless lowered his head and said beside a crater. Beneath his feet was Corey. No, calling him Corey was not the truth. Only Corey's head was left beneath Dustless's feet. As for the rest of his body, they were all dismembered. Although he did not directly kill him, the feeling of being dismembered was unforgettable. Your Excellency must be joking. Even if you don't use ghost curse equipment, you can still easily destroy vampires. This is a well-known fact among us vampires, Corey said with a fake smile. He was extremely sullen in his heart. The main culprit who had chopped him into 8 pieces was right in front of him, but he didn't even have the courage to challenge him. No, he had already challenged Dustless just now, but the result was that he was now in such a miserable state. See, it's still effective. Hearing that, Dustless's lips curled into a smirk that deserved a beating. He muttered to himself casually, Crowley, actually, I'm not afraid of you being angry. I just feel that if I beat all of you vampires up, you'll be smarter when you talk, right? Corey was like this back then. Thinking back to the first time we met, he even said that he wanted to capture me and turn me into livestock. After I beat him up, TSK, he became very obedient. Dustless was boringly recounting the past, but Corey was quivering as he listened. It was undeniable that after being taught such a harsh lesson by Dustless, he was much better at speaking than before. At the very least, he did not put on airs and put on airs. No matter what, he would talk after he beat him up and let him understand his own identity and position. This was Dustless's method. It was very direct and rude, but it was undeniable that this method was very effective. At the very least, it made Corey obedient. Do you understand yourself better now? Dustless's eyes were still cold, and his words were also very cold. I understand. Corey's face was bitter. His body had already been dismembered. How could he not understand? He was still alive not because he was lucky. Corey knew that Dustless did not intend to kill him for the time being. All right, cut the crap. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Dustless casually sat on a rock and leisurely swung his legs. His tone and attitude were very frivolous. It's very simple. You've already said it before. Corey took a deep look at Dustless and said with a bitter tone, You should also understand that although I'm the 13th primogenitor on the surface, my true strength is only that of the 7th primogenitor. To kill the 2nd primogenite, Saito, that kind of monster is impossible for me to defeat. Towards the end, Crowley's tone was extremely sorrowful, revealing a sense of helplessness and desolation. This was the powerlessness of the weak. Facing a vampire of a higher level, he simply had no strength to resist and would be instantly killed. What you said is the truth. After staring at Corey for a while, Dustless nodded slightly. As a transmigrator, he knew that what Corey said was the truth. Saito was indeed freed and Corey's father. However, the two of them did not have a good impression of this father. They even wanted to take Saito's head immediately. As for the deep hatred between them, Dustless was not interested. That was the problem between the two of them, father and son. I understand now. After a few seconds of silence, Dustless looked directly into Corey's eyes with his shining eyes. It was as if he could see through one's mind, causing one to not dare to look into his eyes. You want me to kill Saito, right? I can do that, but what benefits will I get? If I remember correctly, Freed seems to be working with the humans. He wants to use the Seraph of Termination to kill Saito, right? You bastard. After hearing Dustless's words, Corey's heart trembled. The person in front of him knew and understood far more than he imagined. Even some top-secret plans that Corey did not know about were known to Dustless. Humans are unreliable. Corey suddenly shook his head and said in a self-deprecating manner, In the eyes of humans, vampires are very dangerous and terrifying. But perhaps they don't know that in the eyes of vampires, humans are even more dangerous and terrifying. Who can be sure that those humans who control the Seraph of Termination will help us? Everything has to be prepared. Don't you think so? Dustless Cohen. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2382. Dustless Koan? Hearing this form of address, Wu Chen's eyes twitched slightly. He stepped on Corey's head, and the cold air emitted from his indifferent gaze seemed to be able to freeze the air. The temperature suddenly dropped to the freezing point. Make it clear to me. I'm not familiar with you guys. This form of address isn't something you can casually use, Dustless said coldly. That voice was like ice, and it was so cold that Corey could only shiver. I understand. Of course, of course. Corey quickly changed his words. His voice was filled with endless fear. Now that he was chopped into pieces, he would definitely be finished if he continued to provoke Dustless. But this time, you're really lucky. You guessed it right. Dustless suddenly changed the topic and said indifferently, I know that Ikane Sakari and that Twilight person aren't good people either. If you work with them, the vampire will be eaten sooner or later. In the end, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. The Twilight people's ambition was to become the king of the world. An existence like the vampire was too much of an eyesore. Once they obtained or successfully researched the Seraph of Terminus, the first person they would deal with would be Dustless, followed by the vampire. You're right. Corey didn't comment and smiled embarrassedly. If that's the case, we can be considered as people in the same camp, friend. Bang. Hearing that, Dustless's eyes turned cold. He kicked out and Corey's head flew out. He was caught off guard and ate a mouthful of soil. Mind your tone, my friend. That kind of thing is too redundant for me, Dustless said coldly. Not to mention a vampire like Corey, even Si Tianli, the leader of the Emperor Ghost Army, didn't dare to talk to Dustless like this. Aw, what an unreasonable guy. Corey was rather distressed, but his mentality was good. He quickly felt relieved and pursed his lips. But there's no doubt that we're in the same camp. Hearing this, Dustless remained silent, his cold eyes quietly looking at Crowley. How about this? Dustless, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. It just so happens that those two idiots are not pleasing to the eye. You vampires, take care of Twilight Man and Ise's Hanren for me. Of course, no problem. Without even thinking about it, Crowley immediately agreed to Dustless's conditions. He was a smart person and knew that this was a transaction. Dustless must have promised them some benefits. As for that Saito, Dustless's bored face was filled with anticipation. He said with interest, to be honest, I've been very bored recently. Let's treat that Chi-Tung as a toy to pass the time. I hope he won't disappoint me. After saying that, Dustless lazily left. He didn't need to say anything else. As long as that guy called Saito appeared, Crowley would inform him. That guy is really outrageous. He actually dared to treat the second ancestor as a toy. TSK. As expected of a vampire's nightmare. Crowley sighed, but he couldn't deny that humans were very good at killing enemies who were several times stronger than them, or even invincible. As for Ise's Hanren and Twilight Man, please die in peace. I'm really sorry. Who asked this world to be so cruel and merciless? Those who aren't suitable can only be eliminated. Looking at the blue sky, Crowley muttered to himself. There was nothing he could do about it. This was the rule of this world. How is it, Friedkoen? This is considered a triumphant return, isn't it? In a quiet villa, only Fried and Crowley were present. Both of them drank Sato's blood. To a certain extent, they could be considered brothers. Oh, of course it is. If you had informed me in advance, I might have specially organized a party for you to celebrate. That guy agreed. What a pleasant surprise. Fried was also full of smiles, but he also couldn't hide the doubts in his eyes. Friedkoen, it seems that you still have some questions. Don't tell me you're suspecting me? After drinking a mouthful of scarlet blood, Crowley didn't seem to care. However, his tone revealed some dissatisfaction, giving off the feeling that he was extremely displeased with Fried's attitude. Thinking about it, it made sense. After all, he had almost lost his life to complete the mission. In the end, he was suspected by his own people. No matter who it was, they would probably complain in their hearts. No, you're mistaken, Crowley. From the beginning to the end, I've never suspected you. After all, we're all from the same faction, Fried said with a smile. Fried said with a smile. When he smiled, his appearance was quite bewitching. He was even more beautiful than a woman. From the beginning to the end. You've never suspected me? Who are you trying to fool? Crowley curled his lips in disdain. As Fried's companion, he knew what kind of person Fried was. Hiding a knife behind a smile was his specialty. But there's one thing I don't understand. Why did that guy want us to deal with Ise's Hanren? Don't you think it's strange? For Dustless, killing Jimu Run and Akatsuki is as easy as blowing a breath. Fried expressed his doubts, wanting to understand Dustless's purpose very much. Friedkoen, the thoughts of some people are not something that we can guess. If you can't get over it, then don't think about it. Crowley recalled Dustless's unfathomable eyes. They were like the ocean, without a bottom to speak of. Perhaps he felt that these two toys had no value to play with, so killing them would only dirty his hands, Crowley added. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2383. Toy. Hearing Crowley's disdainful explanation, Fried fell silent unexpectedly. He had interacted with Dustless before, so he had some understanding of this guy's temperament. Perhaps it was just as Crowley had said, that Dustless disdained killing two people, and felt that it would dirty his hands. Although Toru Twilight was a lieutenant general and a member of the Sea family, he had been taught a lesson by Dustless too many times. He was often beaten up in front of many members of the Imperial Ghost Army, which made him lose face. Therefore, Toru Twilight hated Dustless to the core. To put it bluntly, the world might think that Toru Twilight's mortal enemy was the vampires, but that was not the case. If the Seraph of Termination's research was successful, the first test subject would definitely be Dustless. No matter what. What should we do next? Crowley looked at Fried. He and this guy were in the same faction, so all he needed to do was to follow orders. There was no need to ask about anything else. Is there a need to ask? Of course, we will collude with Dustless. Fried immediately agreed and smiled proudly. The second ancestor, Saito. No, to be precise, the clash between our father and Dustless. Do you think it will be exciting? Of course. Crowley nodded in agreement and scratched his head. But it seems that we have no chance of interfering in that kind of battle between monsters. The moment we appear, we will be killed. I know, right? So, let's just watch quietly. Fried shrugged, not feeling embarrassed. Suddenly, his eyes flashed and he sneered. But the basis of our cooperation is that we kill Toru Twilight and Ike's Hanren. We can't afford to offend a big shot like Dustless. If that's the case, we can only let them die. Where did you go? As soon as he returned to the territory of the Emperor Ghost Army, Dustless was stopped by a little ghost. This kid was quite young, and was wearing the exclusive uniform of the Emperor Ghost Army. He was quite handsome and had two big eyes that were bright and full of spirit. However, his tone was full of all kinds of unkind, and even had a kind of questioning tone. He had an imposing manner. This kid was not an outsider. He was also a member of the Imperial Ghost Army, Hyakuya Yuichiro. Kid, are you talking to me? Dustless looked around and realized that there was no one else around. He looked around and realized that he was the only one here. Dustless looked at Hyakuya Yuichiro in confusion. He didn't know what he was trying to do. Are you doing this on purpose? Hearing this, Yuichiro was furious. He felt that he was being looked down upon. Who else could it be other than you? However, Dustless's reply left Yuichiro dumbfounded. I don't have time to play house with you. Get lost. Dustless didn't say much. He only gave Yuichiro this sentence. Are you looking down on me? Seeing this, Yuichiro glared at him. Dustless's cold eyes didn't have the slightest emotion. He felt that he wasn't respected at all. It was as if he was looking at an ant. I do look down on you. Dustless didn't hide it and said bluntly. You want to question me and even want to know where I went? Tell me, who do you think you are? Yuichiro was just an ordinary soldier. Dustless, on the other hand, was a real general. This kid wanted him to report to him? He must be dreaming. You. Hearing this, Yuichiro was so angry that he gritted his teeth. However, he couldn't refute. Not to mention him, even his superior, Akito Ikase, was a nobody in Dustless's eyes. I know why you are blocking my way. Dustless suddenly lowered his head and looked at Yuichiro. He guessed, let me guess. You want to know if I have any news about Byakuya Michael, right? Humph, you broke into the vampire's camp alone. There must be some important information. Our Emperor Ghost Army is about to go to war with the vampires. It will be beneficial for us to know more information. Hayakuya Yuichiro retorted with a flushed face. He looked at Wu Chun with an open and candid look. TSK, this is a perfect lie. Dustless clicked his tongue and then laughed evilly. Oh, is that so? I forgot to tell you. That vampire called Byakuya Michael was cut into pieces by me. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. The moment Wu Chun finished his sentence, Yuichiro Hayakuya instantly turned hostile. His breathing became faster and more exaggerated. His eyes were bloodshot and his eyeballs were completely red. Swish, 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 swish. Yuichiro didn't show any mercy. He raised his ghost curse equipment and slashed towards Dustless's Achilles heel. Seems like I guessed correctly. Wu Chun smiled proudly. As for the oncoming saber light, he completely ignored it. Clang, clang, clang. Just as the blade was about to hit Dustless, a black shadow rushed over and blocked the tachi easily, intercepting Yuichiro's attack. Xiaoya, get out of my way. I am going to tear this guy apart. Yuichiro's eyes were spitting fire when he saw Xiaoya blocking his attack. He wanted to burn her alive. TSK, how scary. Wu Chun maintained an elegant smile all along. He raised a finger and said lazily, You want to kill me with this kind of trash? Forgive me for being blunt, but using a finger to deal with you is unnecessary. You are too weak. Fight me to the death if you have the guts. Yuichiro roared crazily. His blood-red eyeballs were about to fall out. It was eerie and scary. It was all because of Michael, this special family member. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2384. To Hayakuya Yuichiro, the most important person in his short life was undoubtedly Hayakuya Michael. Although the two of them weren't related by blood, they were as close as brothers, or even closer than that. At this moment, when he heard that Hayakuya Michael was killed, especially when he was chopped into 8 pieces and his corpse was destroyed, Hayakuya Yuichiro was immediately enraged. He stared at Dustless with murderous eyes, wishing he could swallow this eyesore alive. Yo, your relationship is really enviable. So deep? Wu Chun's face was full of ridicule and banter. His attitude was frivolous. You deserve to die. Hayakuya Yuichiro glared at him. Dustless's nonchalant attitude made him even angrier. The veins on his forehead were bulging. Killing someone should at least show a guilty expression. But what kind of attitude did Dustless have? Such arrogance, that playful smile, and that lack of remorse had deeply infuriated Hayakuya Yuichiro. I'll give you one more chance. Apologize to me now, or else. Hayakuya Yuichiro was filled with murderous intent. There was a hint of crazy killing intent in his words. That face that could be considered delicate and pretty also became sinister and distorted. His hatred for Wu Chun was engraved in his bones, and his hatred was as deep as the sea. You want me to apologize? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but laugh. He stared at Hayakuya Yuichiro for a moment and said coldly, That kid wanted to attack me, so I chopped him into pieces. You want me to apologize to him? Is your brain made of paste? Use your brain when you speak, kid. I don't care what the reason is. Since you dared to harm Michael, then. That's not right. As if he suddenly remembered something, Hayakuya Yuichiro suddenly exclaimed and said in disbelief. A few years ago, when I escaped from the vampire city, he was killed by those noble vampires. How did you chop him into 8 pieces? Absolutely impossible. It was also because he had witnessed his loved ones being killed by vampires that Yuichiro's personality had become distorted. The tragic death of Michael had provoked him. and he hated vampires to the core. He wanted to destroy this race at all costs. However, Dustless had said that he had chopped Miguel into pieces. Wasn't that bullsh*t? You tricked me. Hyakuya Yuichiro's face turned ashen. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. Wu Chen had underestimated his intelligence. The most embarrassing thing was that he had been fooled. This made Hyakuya Yuichiro even more furious. He wanted to bite Wu Chen to death. Tsk. You only realized it now? Dustless's face was full of disdain, and then he mocked. I don't need to lie to you, kid. That guy is indeed alive and well, but it's also true that he was cut into 8 pieces by me. But his body is very special, and he didn't die. Of course, I didn't have the intention to kill him at that time. Hearing this, Yuichiro remained silent. He knew about Dustless's strength. Even if they had never fought in a life-and-death battle, Dustless's nickname, the Golden Reaper, was given to him by the vampires. It was enough to show how much the vampires were afraid of him. A race that was afraid of a human. It was enough to show how unfathomable Dustless was. You're already in your teens, and you still don't know anything. Your age. Don't tell me you've been living like a dog all this time? I say Sonrin students are really bad. Dustless muttered to himself. Yuichiro's face was blank, and he didn't seem to understand what Dustless was talking about. But I saw Miguel being killed with my own eyes. Yuichiro said stubbornly. He's indeed dead. Dustless nodded and couldn't deny it. He replied. As a human, that guy is indeed dead. However, he's no longer a human, but... At this point, Dustless showed a hint of schadenfreude. You still don't understand, right? That kid's nature has changed, from a human to your favorite vampire. Boom boom boom. These words were a blow to Yuichiro. His whole body was like a statue, and he didn't move at all. Nonsense, how can a human become a vampire? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? Yuichiro was stunned for a moment before he said angrily. No, you've got it wrong. A 3-year-old kid's IQ is higher than yours. Dustless said. Even though Yuichiro was 15 or 16 years old, he could be very childish sometimes. Among the vampires, there are some special existences, nobles. After drinking their blood, humans will change and become vampires. Don't you think it's hard to believe? Actually, that's the truth. Some vampires were humans a long time ago, but because they drank the blood of their ancestors, they became vampires. Wu Chen said tirelessly. He glanced at the petrified Yuichiro and said faintly, Do you understand now? That kid, Miguel, has become a vampire. So what's your choice? When he spoke up to hear, a mischievous smile appeared on Wu Chen's face. His glowing eyes were like a venomous snake that emitted a dim gray light, causing others to shudder. Your most beloved friend suddenly became your archenemy, hee. Isn't this interesting? Dustless's smile became even more evil. Hyakuya Yuichiro's head was buzzing nonstop. He was very excited when he heard that Hyakuya Miguel was still alive. However, he fell silent when he heard that he had become a vampire. He was quite conflicted and didn't know how to face Hyakuya Miguel. He had always wanted to eliminate all the vampires. Now that his family member had suddenly become a vampire, it was a big blow to him. Yuichiro. At this time, Yuichiro Hyakuya's friends also came. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2385. Without a doubt, the so-called gang of scoundrels referred to his teammates. No matter where he was, they would circle around him like flies. Perhaps this was the so-called protagonist's aura. His charisma was infinitely magnified. His strength is average, but he's quite popular. Dustless said calmly. He glanced around and saw the 3 mistresses, 3 Leaves, Jun Tsukasa, Yuichi Zaoi, and even Sasuke Xiaoya. Of course, at least he's more popular than someone like you. Yuichiro Hyakuya looked at the crowd and felt relieved. He had suffered a blow from Dustless. Fortunately, there was someone to help him recover his health. He lifted his gaze and gently looked at the few people who had rushed over. Then he stared at Chua Xiaoya and swept his gaze over her. However, his brows furrowed slightly. This is interesting. Seems like it's worse than I thought. Dustless also noticed Yuichiro Hayakuya's frown. He suddenly understood something and smiled. Dustless and Sasuke Xiaoya had a good relationship. After all, the two of them had known each other for many years. Dustless even gave Sasuke Xiaoya some pointers. However, this was equivalent to offending Yuichiro Hayakuya. He hated Dustless very much. Hence, he was more resistant to Sasuke Xiaoya. Sometimes, he would even disobey some orders. Of course, after knowing that Dustless almost killed Michael Hayakuya, Yuichiro Hayakuya's hatred for Dustless deepened. In addition, Yuichiro Hayakuya's relationship with the three mistresses and three leaves was also very bad. The two of them were like natural enemies. Whenever they met, there was no need for others to instigate them. Are you an idiot? Are you tired of living? Do you know who you are talking to? If you want to die, don't drag us down with you. The three mistresses and three leaves were shocked and angry when they saw Yuichiro Hayakuya provoking Dustless. Wasn't this playing with fire? Wasn't this pushing them into a fire pit? Who was Dustless? He was the only invincible general in the Supreme Ghost Army. He was regarded as an invincible legend. Over the years he had been fighting everywhere, killing vampires. Because of Dustless's appearance, the number of vampires had decreased sharply, and they were no longer as arrogant as before. There was no doubt about Dustless's strength, but now Yuichiro was provoking such a big shot. What kind of behavior was this? What a typical brain-dead retard. Sir Dustless, I'm sorry, but this guy's head is abnormal. Please don't lower yourself to his level. Although we are in the same team, this guy is like a child who hasn't grown up. The three palaces and three leaves ran to Dustless and bowed in apology. There was a trace of fear in their voices. Don't worry about it. Wu Chen just smiled gently when he heard this, and then he waved his hand and said with relief, I know that this fellow's head isn't normal, so don't worry. He won't go so far as to vent his anger on all of you over such a trivial matter. Phew. The three palaces and three leaves heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this. Their hearts that were hanging in the air finally relaxed. Traitor. Seeing this scene, Yuichiro, who was extremely disdainful, snorted coldly. He was extremely disgusted. You idiot. The three palaces and three leaves were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. She had begged for mercy for him, but this guy was stubborn and did not appreciate it at all. Now he even called her a traitor. The three palaces and three leaves were so angry that they gritted their teeth. That's enough, Three-Leaf-chan. He is such a person. At this moment, Sasuke Xiaoya's voice suddenly sounded. Her face was calm, and she was not surprised at all. That guy hates Dustless. What's more important is that you are stabbing him in the heart. His pride won't be able to take it. Dustless was Yuichiro's life and death enemy. The three palaces and three leaves did not care about his feelings and lowered their heads to Dustless. How could Yuichiro tolerate this? It was not surprising that they would fall out with him. It seems that because of my existence, there is a big misunderstanding between you guys. It seems that the team with good teamwork is going to be finished. Looking at the changes in their expressions, Dustless muttered to himself. In the original work, Sasuke Xiaoya's team had good teamwork. But because of him, they were going to have internal strife now. Dustless did not care about this. Anyway, it had nothing to do with him. Then, Sir Dustless, can you give me your autograph? The three palaces and three leaves blushed like a budding flower. Regardless of whether Dustless agreed or refused, she took out a pen and paper. Autograph. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He asked in surprise, I am not a movie star. Why do you want my autograph? Even to vampires, I am just a butcher. Oh, it seems that you don't know yet. Sasuke Xiaoya looked into Dustless's eyes and said, You are a famous big shot. You have a lot of fans, especially many women who regard you as their dream lover. Hearing this, Dustless did not know whether to cry or laugh. Immediately, he stared at the three palaces and three leaves who were looking forward to his autograph. Without wasting any time, he picked up the pen and wrote down his name. You are good looking, but your handwriting is too ugly. Sasuke Xiaoya complained about the crooked handwriting. Well, this is not what I am good at. Dustless did not care, but the 3 palaces and 3 leaves kept Dustless's autograph like it was a treasure. She made a standard 90-degree bow. Thank you. In the human world, Dustless was a well-known big shot. Wherever he went, he was invincible. He was known as the strongest human. In these years of battles, he had built up a lot of prestige. Therefore, he had a lot of fans, and the 3 palaces and 3 leaves happened to be one of them. This bastard, where does his charm come from? On the other side, Hyakuya Yuichiro was complaining. He looked at the 3 palaces and 3 leaves and said indignantly, "This woman looks smart. Who knew that she is the type with big boobs but no brain?" P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 gifts plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Oh. Chapter 2386. Hyakuya Yuichiro was extremely angry. It wasn't that he was jealous of Wu Chun. Both of them already didn't like each other. Especially Wu Chun, no matter how he looked at him, he was an eyesore. His stinky face made him feel stifled. Hyakuya Yuichiro's friends, Jun Yuichiro and Zayinu Yuichiro, were his hardcore supporters. Naturally, both of them supported Hyakuya Yuichiro without hesitation. I still have something to do. I'll leave first. The war with the vampires will be very dangerous. Dustless smiled and rubbed Zayinu Yuichiro's head. He still had to deal with the second ancestor, Saito. He didn't have time to waste with this group of brats. Wait. However, there were always some brats who thought they were infallible blocking Dustless. Hyakuya Yuichiro warned coldly. You dared to injure Michael and leave so casually? Do you think it's appropriate? You're asking me if it's appropriate? Don't you think this question is too redundant? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but sneer. He snorted and said, He's a vampire and I'm a human. I'm already merciful for not killing him. You still ask me if it's appropriate? This question is too idiotic. When humans and vampires meet, it's a matter of life and death. Now, Hyakuya Yuichiro asked him if it's appropriate. It's ridiculous. Dustless didn't kill the kid and let him live. It's a great mercy. You should leave something for me too. Without saying anything, Hyakuya Yuichiro took a few pills and swallowed them. Many people saw this scene and were stunned. They were so shocked that they didn't know what to do. Are you crazy, Yuichiro? After a while, Jun Yuichiro and Zayinu Yuichiro raised their voices and looked nervously at the crazy Hyakuya Yuichiro. Let alone them, even Mia, and Zayinu Yuichiro were surprised. The pills that Hyakuya Yuichiro took were specially developed. 1 pill could increase his strength. 2 pills would put his life on the line. TSK, it seems that this guy's hatred for me is deeper than vampires. Really, you only took care of Hyakuya Michael and didn't kill him. It's not like you're targeting yourself. Do you have to be so desperate? Dustless scratched his head. Because of Hyakuya Michael, Hyakuya Yuichiro hated him. His ferocious eyes as if he wanted to kill Dustless. Ayo. At the same time, a strange roar came out of Yuichiro Hyakuya's mouth. It was deafening, and there was a substantial shockwave, which caught everyone off guard and forced them to retreat. And Zayinu Yuichiro, Yuichiro and Zayinu Yuichiro, and an A and 1 were sent to the ground in a sorry state. What the hell is that thing? Is he possessed by a demon? Looking up, everyone exclaimed one after another. They looked absent-mindedly at the scarlet-eyed Yuichiro, and all of them couldn't help but suck in a few mouthfuls of cold air. At this moment, Yuichiro was completely out of the human category. Pure black tree branches grew out from his back. They were extremely strange and messy. They looked like wings, but they didn't look like wings at the same time. He gave people a creepy feeling as if he was a fallen angel from hell. His whole body was emitting an extremely evil aura. Looking at him made people panic, as if they were being stared at by a devil. Gulp. Everyone was sobbing as they looked at Yuichiro Hyakuya's strange appearance. Many people's expressions changed drastically as they stared at Yuichiro Hyakuya, with extreme caution. They subconsciously stepped back and took the initiative to distance themselves from him. Is this guy still human? Looking at Yuichiro Hyakuya, who was neither a human nor a demon, everyone felt dizzy and lost their minds. The only one who could remain calm was Dustless. That decayed and oppressive deterrence was definitely not something a human could possess. TSK, I was just bored and now you've brought me a good toy. I really want to thank you, Yuichiro. Dustless's lips curled into a happy smile as he felt Yuichiro's murderous aura that wanted to destroy the world. His eyes widened and his interested look made everyone speechless. Of all the people you're interested in, why are you interested in such a monster? He's not a beauty like me. Sasuke complained narcissistically. But he looks like this. Sasuke Xiaoya's gaze was focused on Hyakuya Yuichiro. Although this guy's aura was terrifying, she was not afraid because she knew that Wu Qin was here. Even if it was dangerous, it was a plane that could be easily crossed. It was not even a roadblock. What surprised her was what Yuichiro had experienced. This was obviously not an experiment of the Emperor Ghost Army. At least, she definitely didn't know what kind of monster this was. Ow ow ow. Another monstrous cry sounded out from his throat, and it was deafening. The nearby Emperor Ghost Army's attention was drawn over, and they looked at this monster in shock. It wasn't that they were timid, but the aura of this monster was too terrifying. When those blood-red eyes glanced at them, they felt as if they had fallen into hell. Damn it, why did he come out early? Such a big commotion attracted Ike's Honrin's attention. Looking at Yuichiro's posture, she frowned and clenched her fists subconsciously. Yuichiro was his trump card. He didn't want to use this trump card to turn defeat into victory so soon, especially when it was used on Dustless. Although his relationship with Dustless wasn't good, they weren't enemies either. Now that Yuichiro went berserk against Dustless, wasn't this the beginning of a falling out? Hahaha, although I don't know what's going on, isn't this good? Unlike Ike's Honrin, the Twilight people cheered loudly and couldn't help but clap. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2387. What a powerful monster. What the hell is that thing? Seeing Hyakuya Yuichiro go berserk, many people felt a chill down their spines. He looked like a demon in human skin. His insides had been taken over by the devil. How could a mere human face the demonized Hyakuya Yuichiro? Seraph of End. An angel that can end everything? What a low-class name. End everything? Even if you overestimate yourself, you should know when to stop. Dustless's words were filled with disdain. He did not take Hyakuya Yuichiro seriously at all. I don't care what it is. As long as it can kill Dustless, I will feel better. After all, this kid is part of Red Lotus's Moon Demon group. It must be related to him. Dark Twilight remained calm and composed. His true relationship with Ike's Red Lotus was one of cooperation. Even so, he was inwardly furious. To think that Ike's Red Lotus would conduct such a terrifying experiment behind his back. Was it Twilight himself? Xiaoya, you guys back off. I am the only one in this game. Dustless's expression was calm. He took a few steps forward leisurely while facing the raging wind. Such a powerful monster. Is my teammate? Mia held the ghost curse weapon tightly. Her gaze toward Hyakuya Yuichiro changed. There was fear and disbelief in her eyes. She seemed to be shocked by Hyakuya Yuichiro's strength. There's no need to be envious. Although this guy is powerful, this kind of strength is dangerous and fatal. Moreover, it doesn't belong to him. In the end, he's just borrowing it. In the end, this guy is just a test subject. This is the tragedy of a chess piece. Dustless looked at the dissatisfied girl and explained calmly. He was not afraid of Hyakuya Yuichiro's scarlet eyes. He did not even frown. Test subject? Why haven't I heard of such an experiment? The others did not seem to care about this question. Only Xiaoya Mia, who was a member of the Dark Twilight family, narrowed her eyes. As a member of the Dark Twilight family, she was considered a high-ranking person. She knew about some experiments. However, she had never heard of this experiment. You'll have to ask Ike's Red Lotus about that. She was the one who brought Yuichiro back. Dustless shrugged and said unhurriedly, I remember telling you a long time ago that you shouldn't trust anyone because they won't hesitate to deceive you. Ao. The crazed Yuichiro seemed to understand Dustless's words. He immediately roared angrily, as if he was extremely dissatisfied with Dustless speaking ill of Red Lotus. Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, Yuichiro moved. He gently stepped out, and the ground cracked. It was just a step, but it gave people the illusion that he had crossed hundreds of meters. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Dustless, and the dangerous Tachi fell from the sky. It's over, it's over, it's over. Many people shook their heads inside when they saw this scene. They could not bear to look at Dustless. It was as if they did not want to see the only general of the Ghost Army fall. For everyone, the current Yuichiro was too abnormal. He could be said to be invincible. Dustless was also very strong, but he would definitely be finished in the face of such a monster. He's very strong. Looking up at the blade that was coming for his head, Dustless pursed his lips and smiled. He casually raised a finger. Clang, clang, clang. This small finger was like an indestructible diamond. When the sword came down, there was no reaction at all. It was like two pieces of steel colliding with each other. There was only a slight boom. Then, under the gaze of countless people, Dustless caught the terrifying attack with just one finger. What? This is the Seraph of the End? His strength is too weak. I was looking forward to it. Noticing that there was no reaction from his hand, not even a trace of pain, Dustless said disappointedly, You have such a strong momentum, but the power is so weak. The so-called thunder is loud but the rain is small. Is it referring to people like you? This is a real monster. Seeing this scene, the surrounding Ghost Army soldiers were shocked. They looked at Dustless in horror. Was that finger made of steel? No, logically speaking, even if it was made of steel, it should be broken into two pieces in the face of Yuichiro's ferocious attack, right? However, Dustless stopped the invincible blade with just one finger. It gave people the illusion that he caught a child's fist with his bare hand. It was effortless. Gulp. Haine's Hongren, who knew the inside story, almost bit her tongue off when she saw Dustless stopping the berserk Yuichiro's attack with just one finger. She was different from the Twilight people. She knew what Yuichiro's current state meant. He could even kill a noble vampire easily. The powerful attack of such a ferocious monster was blocked by a single finger. Was this a dream? Everyone felt like they were dreaming. Berserk Yuichiro also felt a great sense of humiliation. He immediately roared towards the sky, and the baleful aura around him increased to a terrifying level. The strangest thing was that some white crystals flowed out from Yuichiro's body. What is this? Everyone was stunned. They looked at the floating crystals in the sky and couldn't help but grab them out of curiosity. They subconsciously put them into their mouths and tasted a bitter and salty taste. It looks like the king of salt. Dustless was surprised. Looking at Yuichiro, he guessed that this kid was really angry. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2388. Dustless's expression didn't change in the face of Yuichiro's powerful outburst. He looked up at the vast sky. Because of the raging granular crystals, the blue sky was white as if it was snowing. What's going on? Many people cried out in surprise. They were shocked to find that after their bodies came into contact with these granules, they actually began to turn into salt. Their flesh and blood began to rapidly collapse, turning into sparkling salt. Ao. Another wave of heart-wrenching cries rang out, deafening. Some of the weaker people were even shaken to the point of bleeding from their eardrums. Originally, I didn't want to be enemies with that guy. But now, it seems that the situation is irreversible. Since he's already gone berserk, then I'll ruthlessly trample on Dustless. Ike's Hanren was no pushover. Since she had already offended Dustless, she might as well go all out. She did not care about it anyway. Lord Twilight, I've discovered the reaction of Seraph of Termination. At the critical moment, Sangong Kuei suddenly trotted over. Her words struck Ji Mu as if he was struck by lightning. He was charred on the inside and tender on the outside. He was dumbstruck. Terminating Seraph reaction? What kind of joke was this? Could it be that someone was even more advanced in their research than us? You even succeeded? Dusk felt as if his brain had short-circuited. His blazing end angel was about to succeed, but in the end it was still a distance away. Now that someone had succeeded in advance, how could he remain calm? Damn Red Lotus, it's him. It must be that bastard. That Hyakuya Yuichiro is his subordinate, and he was the one who guided him to join the Moon Ghost clan. Red Lotus will never be able to clear her name. The Dusk Man's face turned green. He felt like he was working with a hungry wolf. Those sharp claws could not only hurt the enemy, but they could also tear him apart. Lord Mu Ren, what should we do? The Three Palace Kuei was Mu Ren's trusted aide. Watch this. The dusky man's face was ugly. His face was almost purple, and it could be seen how bad his mood was. In fact, it was worth mentioning that the people of Toru Twilight didn't know what to do. The raging Yuichiro couldn't fight back at all, so even if he was full of anger, he couldn't vent it. He could only hold it in. His handsome face was red with anger. The Seraph of the End, this was completely beyond his understanding. The Twilight People's plan was still in progress. How could they fight against Dustless and Hyakuya Yuichiro? He simply did not have the capital to do so, so he could only watch helplessly. Creak, creak. The sound of his teeth clenching caused people to shudder. Even their bodies felt cold. When they looked up, they saw that there were traces of blood flowing out from Yuichiro's red eyes. Combined with his twisted and hideous face, it made him look even more sinister and terrifying. The most disgusting thing was that there were traces of saliva drooling. Awoo. In the end, with a loud bang, a violent impact swept out. In an instant, it was as if a violent sandstorm had swept up. Wild winds danced and raged in the sky, mixed with a large amount of sand, so much so that everyone had to close their eyes. Ayaya, hurry up and come over. Dustless acted as if nothing had happened. He provoked in a bored manner. I am used to being arrogant. I just want to be beaten up. Hurry up and beat me up. Sui Xiaoya and the others were speechless. This guy was really asking for a beating. Awoo. Such arrogance seemed to have really angered Yuichiro. He suddenly condensed a white long spear in his hand. Many white particles dripped down, and when they landed on the ground, the stones turned into white pillars of salt. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Yuichiro took a step forward, passing through layers of space. The cold light contained in the spear pierced straight towards Dustless's head. Poochie! Dustless didn't dodge, and his head suddenly exploded. But what was strange was that when a human head exploded, it should spurt out blood. But when Dustless's head was pierced, it spurted out golden light. Is that all? Come on, show me your full strength. Otherwise, when I decide to make my move, you won't have the chance to play anymore. Even though Dustless's head was destroyed and disappeared, his mocking voice still spread out in the boundless void. What's going on? Is he killed? The members of the Emperor Ghost Army were stunned. It was said that vampires were monsters that couldn't be killed, but Dustless seemed to be even more mysterious and unfathomable than those vampires. Is this guy still human? Not to mention the others, even Ise's Hanrei and Ji Murin were looking at Dustless in disbelief. Dustless's body was still standing tall and straight like empty tie. It was as if nothing could shake his tall and straight posture. Everyone couldn't help but respect him. Awoo. 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 Hyakuya Yuichiro screamed crazily a few more times. Once again he lunged his spear at Wu Chen's head. Poochie. 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 In just a few seconds Wu Chen's body was full of holes. His abdomen was full of holes. But what made people stunned was that even though there were wounds all over his body, Wu Chen still stood there as if nothing had happened. The most shocking thing was that Dustless was still singing a pleasant song. Boom. 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 Hyakuya Yuichiro was also crazily stabbing Dustless's body. There were more and more holes, but he still couldn't shake Dustless. Looks like you're at the end of the road. It's time to end this impromptu party. Dustless's broken body suddenly shone brightly, and his body was like a blazing sun. The holes in his body were repaired in the blink of an eye, and he returned to his original state. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2389. Monster, Monster, Monster. Seeing that Dustless had recovered in the blink of an eye, everyone started to curse. This was too much. Vampires died after being stabbed by a ghost curse weapon. Yuichiro was stabbed by a blade. Needless to say, even if he didn't die, he would still be injured. However, Dustless was beaten into a beehive. In the end, he was safe and sound. His white face was filled with vitality. This was too much of a blow. Yuichiro, who had gone berserk, seemed to be frightened. He roared at Dustless angrily, as if venting his unwillingness and hostility. "Brat, what are you unhappy about?" Dustless's handsome face suddenly became gloomy. He said in a gloomy tone, "In the past years, do you know what I have experienced? My strength has reached this level. Do you think I got it empty-handed? Compared to you who borrowed the strength of others, I have spent hundreds of years to reach this level. Do you know what kind of effort I have put in?" Clang, clang, clang. While speaking, Dustless unsheathed the Ajuruamaru in his hand. The slender grass-green blade emitted a cold air. The surrounding air instantly became cold. This saber's power, these few years when Dustless controlled it, its power was unleashed to the extreme by him. "Repent." Dustless raised the Ajuruamaru expressionlessly and slashed down. Boom, boom, boom. A huge black slash swept out from the tip of the Ajuruamaru. It split the ground in half, and went straight for Yuichiro. Yuichiro felt a sense of danger. His scarlet eyes flashed with a trace of human-like fear. Perhaps he felt the power of this attack. He subconsciously took a step back. It seems that even the Seraph of Termination can't stop this guy. Jimurin and Heine's Hanran's expression changed greatly. They had overestimated Dustless's strength. They had treated him as a godlike opponent. But now, it seemed that they had greatly underestimated this opponent. The enemy was beyond godlike. Even the Seraph of Termination couldn't handle it. Pucci. The black slash penetrated Yuichiro's body and tore him apart. Although this kid's strength was average, he was able to escape with the wind under his feet. It was as if he was possessed by a god. At the critical moment, he managed to avoid the attack of the black energy tide. But even so, Yuichiro was still seriously injured. The black branches on his back were all broken. The moment the slash hit him, it turned into thousands of sharp blades that washed over his body. His whole body was riddled with holes, and there were horrifying wounds all over. "You're really lucky." Dustless was amazed, looking at Yuichiro's eyes full of ridicule. It turns out that a beast that has lost its consciousness, in the face of life and death, will also be afraid. Immediately after, Dustless took a step forward. Swish. Swish. This step was not a big deal, but Yuichiro, who felt Dustless's strength, took a few steps back and looked at him cautiously. The Seraph of Termination. Is he afraid of Dustless? Case Hongren clenched her fists. She didn't know when, but sweat had already soaked her clothes. Today's battle had refreshed her knowledge. The Seraph of Termination was not invincible. She didn't know that humans could be so crazy that they could crush the Seraph of Termination. Even though Yuichiro was still stubbornly resisting, every time Dustless took a step forward, he would take a few steps back. The outcome of this battle was already clear. "Do you think you can run?" Dustless suddenly turned his hand. Boundless gravitational force and eye power were unleashed to the maximum. 10,000 heavenly attraction. A pitch-black hole appeared on Dustless's right hand, erupting with an irresistible gravitational force. Everything in the world would be forcibly pulled over by him. Hyakuya Yuichiro, who was constantly retreating, suddenly lost control of his body. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew towards Dustless. In the face of gravitational force, no one could resist it, let alone Yuichiro. In front of such a powerful force, He was just a lonely boat in the vast ocean. It was unrealistic for him to resist. Die. Looking at Yuichiro, who was flying towards him, Dustless smirked. He didn't hide his bloodthirsty killing intent anymore. He raised his hand and slashed down mercilessly at the kid. In the past, he let Yuichiro live because he wanted to see the power of the Seraph of Termination, but the result was barely satisfactory. Since that was the case, what value did he have? Hyakuya Yuichiro can go and die. Puchi. A cold light cut through Yuichiro's body. A ghastly wound appeared from his chest to his abdomen. His flesh was torn open and blood flowed out nonstop. One could even see the organs hidden in the wound. Even the bright red heart could be vaguely seen. This slash almost split Yuichiro into two halves. Yuichiro. Seeing Yuichiro in such a terrible state, Jun Tsukasa and Zaioi Nu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They glared at Dustless and cursed. Why did you attack Yuichiro, you bastard? He is also part of the Emperor Ghost Army. He is our comrade. What does it have to do with me? Wu Chen glanced at the two of them casually and replied in an indifferent tone. From the moment he waved his sword at me, his fate was already sealed. I'm a narrow-minded person. When someone provokes me, I want to crush his body without hesitation. I don't have the so-called mentality of a powerhouse. Dustless would take revenge. This was the true portrayal of Dustless. Jun Tsukasa was furious. His hands were trembling, and he couldn't help but grab the twin blades. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2390. Don't be rash. Instead, it was the timid Zayinu who stopped Junyu Shifeng. She pointed at Hyakuya Yuichiro and said sorrowfully, even in that state, Yuichiro wasn't Wu Chen's opponent, let alone you? Bear with it for a while. You still have a sister to take care of. Jun Mochizuki. You don't want her to live alone in this world, right? Needless to say, Zayinu and Iyi's persuasion was unexpectedly effective. Moon Monarch Jun glared at Dustless unhappily, then closed his eyes in despair. He was a person who understood when to advance and when to retreat. Don't worry. When I have nothing to worry about, I will avenge you. Jun Mochizuki swore to himself as he looked at Hyakuya Yuichiro's corpse. He had to admit that compared to Dustless, he was too inexperienced. He was like a child who had not grown up. Dustless did not even need to personally make a move. With a light wave of his hand, there would be countless lackeys who wanted to rely on Dustless to crush him to death. For example, Jun Tianli. Dustless only needed to make a sound and Junyu Shifeng would die without a complete corpse. You're quite good at enduring. Wu Chen glanced at Moon Gentleman and said faintly, young people should be like this. It's best to know when to yield and when to stand tall. As the saying goes, it's easy to break when you're too strong. Especially in front of me. Everything is easy to break. So there's nothing bad about obediently lying on the ground. Look, what's going on with that guy? Why are his fingers moving? Isn't he dead? At this moment, many of the sharp-eyed King Ghost Army soldiers cried out. They were shocked to find that Hyakuya Yuichiro, whose heart had been destroyed, was moving his fingers again. I knew it. He can't be killed so easily. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to destroy the world. Seeing this scene, Ike's Hongren smiled gently. Her heavy heart finally felt a little more comforted. Hyakuya Yuichiro was his biggest backer. Now that his backer was dead, he no longer had any capital to continue playing in this world. When that time comes, he would be a loser. He can be resurrected? Even the knowledgeable Sui Xiaoya could not help but widen her eyes. The shock on her face was clearly visible. Surprised? Dustless pursed his lips and smiled gently. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, like still water. His calm gaze was unusually calm, as if he had already expected this outcome. After all, they are the seraph of the end. They seem to be the playthings of God. If Yuichiro Hyakuya wants to die, those angels won't let him die, Dustless said in an understatement. In the original work, there seemed to be a similar situation. Yuichiro Hyakuya, who was supposed to be dead, suddenly came back to life. The reason was that the angels didn't allow him to die, and then he was awakened by Ajiramaru. Now it seemed that they had achieved the same result through different means. Then aren't you going to finish him off? This guy coming back from the dead is a huge threat to you, right? 3 palaces and 3 leaves suddenly ran over and said with admiration, I am your fan. If you let me do it, I will definitely kill this guy. No way. Am I really that charming? Staring at 3 palaces and 3 leaves who were almost infatuated with him, Dustless rubbed the girl's head and asked, You heard just now, right? This guy is our companion, and also part of the Emperor Ghost Army. If you kill him, aren't you afraid of being punished? Humph, what's so great about that? Unexpectedly, 3 palaces and 3 leaves just snorted disdainfully. Her eyes were shining as she looked at Dustless as if she had seen delicious food. She licked her thin lips and said with a smile, You are the general of the Emperor Ghost Army. If Lord Dustless says a word, I will be fine. Dustless was speechless when he heard this. Were the girls nowadays so cunning? So she had such a plan. I appreciate your kindness. Unexpectedly, Dustless just waved his hand gently, and his face suddenly became cold. Do you think it is a good thing that the guy is alive? 3-Leaf-chan, you are too narrow-minded. Don't forget, this is a cruel world where humans eat humans. But vampires are the biggest enemy of humans. Remember, humans eat humans too. Humans eat humans too? Hearing Dustless's words, 3 palaces and 3 leaves were obviously stunned. She looked at Dustless with empty eyes, not understanding what he meant. Could it be? But soon Xiaoya's beautiful eyes flashed. She subconsciously looked at the Twilight Commander, and suddenly understood something. All troops attack. Capture Hayakuya Yuichiro. Kill anyone who blocks the way. The Twilight Commander's cold voice suddenly sounded. Turning around, he came with a large number of Emperor Ghost Army and surrounded Hayakuya Yuichiro. See, I don't need to say anything. The people who will clean up the mess are here. Dustless said leisurely. Of course, he understood the Twilight Commander's plan and purpose. How could such a powerful weapon fall into the hands of others? He must control it. In addition, the Twilight Commander had other ideas. Wouldn't Hayakuya Yuichiro be the best test subject? Thinking of this, the Twilight Commander's heart suddenly became clear as if he had eaten honey. Ha 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 ha. The world is in front of us. It was as if he could see the invincible stance of sweeping through the world in the future. The people of the Twilight tribe couldn't help but burst out laughing. Soon Xiaoya saw this scene, but her beautiful eyes dimmed. The Soon family was such a cold family. There was only scheming and power. This is getting more and more interesting. You two slowly bite each other. There is still a long time. Don't bite each other to death in a hurry. It won't be nice. Dustless smiled but didn't say anything. Hayakuya Yuichiro was the trump card of Ike's Akatsuki. How could she swallow it when he was snatched away? Obviously not. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Oh. Chapter 2391. Losing Hayakuya Yuichiro would be a huge loss for Ike's Red Lotus. After all, he was her only trump card. It was too important, and had an extraordinary significance. Let's go back. After the matter was settled, Dustless turned around and left leisurely. The Emperor Ghost Army also retreated. Even Moo, his archenemy, was like a rat crossing the street, decisively hiding. This kid had been tricked by Dustless many times and had become much smarter. Right, don't go out casually for the time being. The storm is coming. Staring at the distant horizon, Wu-chan said frankly and confidently. Then, his body gradually faded and his back gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Understood. Sasuke, Xiaoya, Mia, and Mia glanced at each other and didn't ask anything. They only nodded slightly. Night fell, and the sky gradually darkened. A bone-chilling wind swept across the vast land, blowing sand everywhere. It was so strong that people couldn't open their eyes. One could also faintly hear ghostly cries and howls. It was especially oppressive. This city that had been through countless wars had been wiped out by the flames of war. Ever since the destruction of mankind, no one cared about it for a long time. After going through all kinds of hardships, it still managed to hold on until now. However, it was greatly different recently. Ghostly cries and howls could be heard from time to time, as if it had really reached the end of its road. Xiao xiao xiao. The night was dark and the wind was strong. It was the time for murder and arson. A black shadow shuttled through the night. This person's body was emitting a clear cold light. His body was as light as a cicada's wings. He quietly moved forward in the dark without making any movements. Plop! When this black shadow landed, it was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. There was no trace of water on his clothes. He was as elegant as the wind and abnormally vigorous. Yuichiro, I'll definitely avenge you. This black figure had a head of golden hair, and under the hazy moonlight, its beautiful azure eyes were even more dazzling as gemstones. Looking carefully, this person was actually Hyakuya Michael. Hearing that Hyakuya Yuichiro was heavily injured by Dustless and had entered the realm of life and death, Hyakuya Michael was furious. He immediately rushed over without caring about anything. His destination was Dustless's temporary residence. He wanted him to pay back 100-fold. Really, what is the meaning of this? Inside the dimly lit tent, this was where Dustless temporarily rested. Although it was very simple, as the only general of the Emperor Ghost Army, the treatment that Dustless enjoyed was naturally not something that others could enjoy. It was very complete. However, what made him speechless was that just as he was about to fall asleep, 2 uninvited guests came. Yin Xiaoya and the 3 palaces and 3 leaves. You're not young anymore. Why are you still sleeping with me? Dustless was also speechless. Were these 2 little girls stupid? Didn't they know that men and women shouldn't touch each other? If we don't care, why do you care? A frivolous expression appeared on Chuang Xiaoya's face as she said disapprovingly. Could it be that you still think we would molest you? That's right, that's right. He's too stingy. No matter what, he's still a general of the Imperial Ghost Army. What's more, I'm your cute fan. Do you want your hardcore fan to sleep on the streets? Be careful or I'll expose you. The 3 palaces and 3 leaves nodded their chins forcefully. Their tone was coquettish and soft, more like they were acting coquettishly. Chuang Xiaoya didn't even wait for Dustless to speak. She directly took off her shoes and even unbuttoned her clothes. We're about to go to war with the vampires. It's not safe outside, but it's very safe here. The Golden Reaper, this nickname is feared by all vampires. It's okay for the 2 of us to freeload for one night. It seems that after the extinction of mankind, human ethics and morality have also collapsed. Girls nowadays don't care about their identity and influence at all. Dustless rolled his eyes. There was only one bed here. Although it was big enough for a few people to sleep, they could only sleep together, so Dustless felt awkward. Quickly find them for me. They definitely haven't gone far. If we can't find those 2 people, we'll be finished. Outside the tent, there were suddenly chaotic shouts. Groups of the Imperial Ghost Army were searching for something. They didn't let go of anyone's tent, except for Dustless's. It was a restricted area. No one dared to set foot in it, so it was unusually peaceful. Could it be? Suddenly narrowing his eyes, Dustless suddenly thought of something. He looked at Chuang Xiaoya with a smile. Little girl, you're not obedient at all. How dare you plot against me? Plot against you? How is that possible? I don't have the guts. Chuang Xiaoya immediately denied it, but her small fists were clenched tightly, and her eyes were flickering. It seemed that she was a little guilty. You're wanted, right? Looking at the 2 of them carefully, Dustless suddenly said. To be able to mobilize so many Imperial Ghost Army, you're obviously not a small character. If I'm not wrong, the person who's wanted is that kid from the Twilight Tribe, right? Chuang Xiaoya didn't say anything, but a dim light flashed in her eyes. Dustless's guess was not far from the truth. Sometimes I really hate the Shi family. After a while, Chuang Xiaoya suddenly spoke. Her beautiful eyes were filled with coldness. When she mentioned the Shi family, her words were full of hatred and disgust. She didn't have the slightest good impression of this family. Those who were useful to them would be treasured, and those who were no longer useful would be abandoned. Indeed. Being born into such a family, outsiders may think that there's limitless glory, but in fact, everyone has their own difficulties. It's just that no one knows or understands. Dustless didn't deny it. He and Shi Tianli were old acquaintances. He knew this guy's character. The so-called children were sometimes more like props. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2392. However, even though Ji Tianli was cold and heartless, he was still slightly more humane than Ji Mu. At the very least, he wouldn't kill Ji Xiaoya. After all, she was his daughter. However, Ji Mu was different. This guy even wanted to kill his father, let alone Ji Xiaoya. Tell me the reason. Pointing at two stools, Dustless gestured for the two to sit down. He said calmly, "You two can rest assured. That brat Ji Mu wouldn't dare to barge in even if he had the courage of a bear or a leopard. He doesn't want to die early." It wasn't that Ji Mu was afraid of Dustless's military rank. Even though he was a general, Ji Mu was used to being lawless. He wasn't afraid of a mere military rank. What made him afraid was Dustless's unfathomable strength. He had also provoked Dustless before. Sadly, he was crushed every time and lost all his face. At first glance, Ji Mu had an unprecedented fear of Dustless, so much so that he didn't dare to act rashly. "I don't know either." Ji Xiaoya shook her head bitterly. "Everyone related to Hyakuya Yuichiro has been arrested. The two of us were lucky to escape. As for the others, I don't know." Other than Ji Xiaoya and Sangong, there was also Junyu Shifeng and Zhao Yinu who were wanted. The two of them didn't know their whereabouts. "Is that so?" Dustless nodded thoughtfully. He stared at the two of them for a moment before sighing helplessly. "Xiaoya, I even hugged you when you were young. I also have a few years of friendship with your father, that old monster. Even if I don't give face to the monk, there's no harm in saving you once. As for you..." Dustless looked at Sangong and Sanyi. His eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Gulp. However, the three palaces and 3 leaves were very nervous. They rolled their eyes and hurriedly stood up and said, "I am your loyal fan. You can't be so heartless. Besides, protecting me is insignificant to you. Disappear." "What else can I say when you say that?" Dustless shrugged. "However, if the two of you want to sleep in the same bed as me, I don't mind. I won't lose out anyway." Since the others didn't care, what else could Dustless say? Phew. What is this? It's not worth mentioning. The two women looked at each other and didn't care about this. In this world where order had collapsed, being able to live was already hard to come by. Why would they care about these details? "The two of you should wash up and go to bed." After saying this, Dustless walked out of the tent. There were Emperor Ghost soldiers all around him, and all of them had ferocious expressions as they searched everyone's tents. However, when they saw Dustless, they immediately fled. Before this, the people of Dusk had ordered them to run for their lives if they encountered Dustless. This guy was too dangerous. Seriously, why am I scarier than a vampire? Seeing this scene, Dustless rolled his eyes and didn't stop them. This was a good thing. No one would disturb him, and he wouldn't be annoyed. It took a while for the two women to wash up, so Dustless left alone. As for his own tent, there was nothing to worry about. Even if he gave the people of Dusk and his men 10 lives, they wouldn't dare to break in at will. He knew what the consequences were. Whoosh! Under the night sky, the stars twinkled, and looking at the sky, the moonlight was beautiful. The only flaw was that the environment was a bit desolate. Sitting alone in the ruins, Dustless's eyes were hollow. That guy, when is Saito coming? Dustless bowed his head and sighed. His words were full of impatience. He knew that Saito was a scheming person. It was really difficult to lure him out. Suddenly feeling a chill locking on him, Dustless frowned and turned his head to look. Then his observation hockey spread out, and the wind and grass within a few hundred meters were all seen. "Yo, Why are you not afraid of death? Are you itching for a fight again? Wu Chen rubbed his head speechlessly. He raised his eyes and looked into the distance, looking at the creeping black figure. You brat, are you here to be beaten? No, you're here to die, right? Even in the dark night, Dustless saw the identity of this person. 100 Knights Michael. Well, it's best if you are willing to come out and die alone. Being exposed by Dustless, 100 Knights Michael was no longer pretentious, and didn't bother to hide. He jumped out directly from the dark ruins, holding his sword tightly in both hands and locking on Dustless. His eagle-like eyes were dotted with a dangerous chill, and the threatening sight made people afraid to look at him. It was extremely dangerous. Your eyes are good. No wonder you dare to retaliate against me. It turns out that your strength is not strong. Dustless nodded slightly. Even if he didn't fight for the time being, he could see from his eyes that the firm and beautiful eyes were more determined than before, without the slightest fear. But with all due respect, I have never been a good talker. You are still here to die. Dustless said straightforwardly, and his contemptuous eyes were full of contempt. It's you who deserves to die. 100 Knights Michael's eyes shot a fierce light, and his feet stepped on the ground forcefully, turning into a streamer moving forward. It was difficult for ordinary human eyes to catch him. Since he dared to provoke Dustless, 100 Knights Michael naturally had enough confidence, or at least a little confidence, otherwise he wouldn't have come to die. Be sure to kill this guy. I can't let him continue to bully Yum. 100 Knights Michael secretly swore in his heart, and the big sword shrouded in cold light slashed towards Dustless's head. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It was also at this moment that countless ripples appeared in the void, as if a door had been opened, and countless divine weapons shot out from it. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2393. The night sky was slightly cold with stars twinkling in the sky. The night breeze blew quietly. It was not that cold, but for some reason, the atmosphere was chilling as if something bad was about to happen. What the hell is this? The young man raised his eyes and looked at the sky not far away. He could not help but be stunned. His tone was filled with shock and astonishment. In the sky above Wu Chen's head, rays of light flickered. The whole world had entered into the night. Only this place was different. Groups of rays of light were pulsating, as if thousands of fireflies were shining at the same time. The bright brilliance made people a little dazed. Dustless looked even more sacred and inviolable under the light. This is called the king's treasure. Dustless raised his slender finger and pointed above his head. He sat on a rock lazily and held his chin with his right hand. He explained with a smile. Are you surprised? A mere human with such extraordinary strength. So you find it hard to accept, right? Hearing this, Yuichiro Hayakuya was silent. His scarlet eyes were focused on Dustless. Although he did not say anything, his pale face showed how terrible he was. Dustless's ability was really strange and unpredictable. It was even more difficult to understand. Looking around, the sky above Wu Chen's head seemed to have opened up another space. Various kinds of divine weapons emerged one after another, filled with sharp cold light. Every weapon could easily destroy Yuichiro Hayakuya. The most unacceptable thing was that there were more than one or two of these divine weapons. They almost filled the sky. Slowly feel despair. Dustless raised his hand and waved it down. All kinds of weapons in the sky suddenly went berserk, and poured down like a storm towards Yuichiro Hayakuya. This damn monster. I don't know where he got his strange moves. I have never heard of them before. The key is that there are too many of them. 100 Knights Michael cursed loudly. With endless anger, he locked onto the various weapons that were shooting over. They were like a swarm of golden locusts. How could he block them? Helplessly, the 100 Knights Michael glared at Dustless ferociously, and retreated unwillingly. Clang, clang, clang. The densely packed weapons all missed, and the ground was instantly pierced into a hornet's nest. Even the sturdy rocks could not withstand the destruction of these sharp weapons, and were dismembered and cracked open. It's not an illusion. 100 Knights Michael, who had retreated to the side, widened his eyes. The large amount of powder that was produced after the rock was crushed blew onto his face. At first, he naively thought that this was an illusion. Still want to run? Dustless shook her head in disdain and waved her hand again. Swish. Swish. All kinds of weapons floating above Yuichiro's head once again pierced through the void. Like a torrential downpour, they pounced on Yuichiro with unstoppable momentum. Oh no! Yuichiro Hyakuya's pupils suddenly constricted as he sensed an unprecedented sense of danger. Without any hesitation, he immediately retreated. Yuichiro Hyakuya's limbs and bones were instantly pierced by all kinds of sharp weapons, leaving behind horrifying bloody holes the size of bowls. Blood instantly gushed out. Kacha! Following an ear-piercing sound, Yuichiro's face instantly turned ferocious, and the pain caused his entire face to twitch nonstop. Imagine how horrifying it would be to be pierced by hundreds of weapons, and have one's body riddled with holes like a beehive. At this moment, the damaged skin began to heal slowly. Although these weapons were powerful, they were not cursed weapons, so they could not kill Yuichiro Hyakuya. But in fact, having an immortal body and eternal youth wasn't a good thing sometimes, such as this special situation. As the weapons were pierced into his body and he couldn't pull them out, his limbs were nailed and couldn't move at all. Although his wounds had healed, they were still difficult to heal completely. The various weapons occupied his wounds, and tortured him to the point that his handsome face looked as though he was possessed by a devil. "Ah, I'm really sorry for not holding back," Dustless said with an apologetic tone, but his face was filled with a mocking smile. "But your twisted face is really pleasing to the eye. Kill me if you dare." Yuichiro Hyakuya yelled angrily. His deafening roar was like an enraged tiger that was overflowing with anger. "Brat!" Dustless suddenly flashed and instantly appeared beside Yuichiro Hyakuya. Yuichiro Hyakuya didn't even have time to react as he swung his sword and thrust it forward. Puffed! A cold light flashed by and severed Yuichiro Hyakuya's neck. A fountain of blood instantly spurted out from his severed neck. But even so, Yuichiro Hyakuya was still alive due to the vampire's strong physique. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2394. Sometimes, living meant more pain. Drip, 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 scarlet blood kept dripping, dyeing the ground into blood-colored plum blossoms. Yuichiro Hyakuya's body was stabbed with all kinds of sharp weapons. In a short period of time, all the blood in his body was drained. His huge body was left with a shriveled body. It was extremely terrifying. Awoo. Even so, Yuichiro Hyakuya's madness didn't diminish. He gritted his teeth and let out a strange sound. It was as though he would only be satisfied after tearing Dustless into pieces. "Are you still not satisfied?" Dustless lowered his head to examine the ferocious youth. His bored expression relaxed slightly as the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smirk that was filled with interest. "I like to treat those arrogant people, such as people like you who are unafraid of death." Dustless's mouth, which was redder than a woman's, opened slightly and said, "Do you know? There's no pleasure in using force to trample on a person's heart. However, shattering their inner perseverance is the greatest pleasure." Towards the end, Dustless's pale lips once again hung a smile. It was a flirtatious smile that left one in a daze. However, when it landed in Yuichiro Hyakuya's eyes, his heart immediately turned heavy. "Brat, look into my eyes." Dustless's ethereal voice invaded the earpiece once again. Upon hearing this, Yuichiro Hyakuya immediately cast his gaze over. His gorgeous gem-like eyes reflected a pair of extremely ominous eyes. The demonic eyes emitted a dark red color, filled with all kinds of ominous negative emotions. Dustless only looked at Yuichiro Hyakuya quietly, but for some reason he felt a sense of panic. It was even worse than killing him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In his eye sockets, ripples splashed out like water ripples. They were untraceable and extremely weak, to the point of being negligible. However, it was also this fleeting glance that caused Yuichiro Hyakuya's deep eyes to turn empty. They lost their previous brightness and turned gray. It was as though his consciousness had been devoured by some monster, leaving him in a daze. Tsukuyomi. These two cryptic words shattered Yuichiro Hyakuya's consciousness. With a plop sound, he fell to the ground, and then his thoughts were pulled into another world of dead silence. Where is this? Yuichiro's face suddenly shrank. After seeing this strange world, his expression suddenly changed. There was an intense uneasiness, and he felt an unprecedented fear. This desolate world was deathly silent, making people feel oppressed. Looking around, within a radius of 1,000 meters, it was a land of death. There were no signs of life. What surprised Yuichiro the most was that he was currently tied to the cross, and all the serious injuries on his body had disappeared. He was safe and sound. How could he not be surprised that he had recovered after being stabbed with over 100 weapons? Could this be the underworld? Yuichiro Hyakuya muttered to himself. He felt a chill down his spine, especially when he saw the scarlet cross on his back. It seemed to have devoured many lives, which made him feel deeply uneasy and irritated. No matter what kind of creature it was, they would always be fearful of the unknown. Tisk, thank me. Dustless's ghostly voice suddenly sounded with a teasing tone. Of course, healing you is only to make it easier for me to torture you. It won't be fun if you die midway. After all, you are a tool for me to amuse myself. As soon as he said that, the faint smile on Dustless's lips turned even more terrifying. It made one shudder. What are you trying to do? Staring at the strange Dustless, Michael's firm heart was in chaos. Although it wasn't to the extent of collapsing, it was already wavering. In such a strange world, Dustless walked through the air step by step. He was like a high and mighty god. His indifferent and dominating eyes made people's willpower slowly disintegrate. It's very simple. Dustless took a step forward hundreds of meters, and instantly appeared in front of Michael. He held a sharp dagger in his hand, and stabbed it into Michael's abdomen. Puffed! His body, which was in perfect condition, was immediately torn apart. With a kacha sound, even his bones were crushed. The horrifying bloody hole made one's scalp tingle. Ah! You bastard, kill me if you have the guts. This stab seemed to have really hurt Michael. He roared madly at Dustless like an exposed lion with his golden hair fluttering wildly. How scary. Dustless smiled faintly. Immediately after, he lifted the dagger and stabbed again. Puffed! Another bloody hole appeared in Michael's abdomen. He was in so much pain that he almost crushed his teeth. His ferocious gaze locked onto Dustless as though it was the only way to reduce the pain. Don't be anxious. Take your time. The instant Dustless's calm voice sounded, Michael's body recovered once again. It was as though everything that happened just now was just an illusion. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2395. Dustless's elegant and handsome face was filled with indifference, and his eyes were tranquil and serene. Upon hearing Michael's horrifying screams, he didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort. Instead, he was very relaxed. Those who didn't know would think that his humanity had been obliterated. Even vampires would have a drastic change in expression upon hearing his painful screams. Killing you would be letting you off too easily. Although it's best that I kill you, the feeling of making you regret living in this world has only just begun. You need to slowly experience it. I will try my best to be gentle and not let you die too early. Dustless blurted out such horrifying words in a casual manner, making one feel uncomfortable all over. Slowly experience it. I'm about to begin, Dustless said indifferently, and immediately after, he exited the Tsukuyomi world. The moment he retreated, countless figures with swords appeared, and began to carry out all sorts of cruel punishments on 100 Knights Mygar. His body was continuously pierced, and there were terrifying knife wounds everywhere. 100 Knights Michael's miserable cries did not stop, and this scene would continue for 24 hours. Life is really as lonely as snow. In the outside world, Dustless looked up at the bright night sky and couldn't help but shake his head gently. He finally understood the meaning of being too high and lonely. Sometimes, being too invincible was also a kind of loneliness, and sweeping the world was also a kind of helplessness. Oofed. At the same time, Michael also regained consciousness. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He looked up at Dustless a few times, and then a mouthful of scarlet blood burst out of his mouth as though his soul had been sucked out. His complexion became even more dispirited, and he was so weak that he looked like a bag of bones. TSK, you're already in this state, yet you're still alive. Kid, your perseverance isn't bad. You can take a beating. After taking a few more glances at Michael, Dustless revealed a smile on his face. The golden-haired youth didn't say anything. His cold eyes were embellished with a cold light, and his oily green eyes made people shudder. Upon closer inspection, his entire body was riddled with holes. There were bloody holes everywhere, and his skin and flesh were lacerated. Although he had just been repaired, that was only in the Tsukuyumi world. It was ultimately a dream. Even after 24 hours, the injuries in the real world still couldn't be repaired. I'm really curious. What kind of trend has made you persist until now? Dustless looked at Hyakuya Michael with interest, then he smiled and said, Is it because of that kid? I mean Hyakuya Yuichiro, if I kill him, you won't be willing to die. After all, you still have to take revenge. You dare to have ideas about Jewel, I will definitely tear you into pieces. These few words touched 100 Nights Michael's bottom line, and he immediately roared with a sinister expression. Idiot. The corner of Dustless's mouth raised slightly, and a smile bloomed. His words were full of contempt and disdain. You are just a lab rat, yet you still want to open your mouth and ask for happiness. Don't you think your hope is too slim? A person's life is like a flash in the pan, only a few decades. Although you are a vampire and your life is relatively longer. But who asked you to be unlucky and meet me in the end? You are really unlucky. However, I am a kind person. In order to let you know the meaning of your death, I might as well tell you the meaning of your and Hyakuya Yuichiro's life. As if he was really interested, Dustless showed a rare serious face, and it was quite serious. What do you mean? Tell me clearly. Hyakuya Yuichiro's eyes were sunken, and all the blood in his body flowed out. His body was shriveled. Vampires were a rather special race. In the case of extreme blood loss, although they wouldn't die, they would degenerate into ghosts. You don't even know this? I thought you would have improved a little after following Freed for a few years, but the result is disappointing. Dustless lowered his gaze slightly, and Hyakuya Yuichiro entered his sight. He was in a very bad state, and his spirit was extremely weak. You and Hyakuya Yuichiro are both experimental subjects for the En's Blazing Angel. The only difference is that Hyakuya Yuichiro is very successful, but you seem to be a failure. Dustless said casually, The reason why I kept you alive is because I wanted to see how powerful the En's Blazing Angel is. Speaking until here, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. Unfortunately, I had a strong interest in that thing at the beginning, but after witnessing Hyakuya Yuichiro's strength after going berserk, to be honest, I have completely lost interest in you. You bastard. Hearing this, Hyakuya Michael glared at Dustless, and his eyes were spitting fire. He wanted to melt Dustless. Still staring at me? If you want to die so much, then I will fulfill your wish. Dustless's pupils suddenly blinked, and the seemingly casual energy ripples splashed gently, but Hyakuya Michael was instantly in big trouble. Kamui. The void around Mikal was distorted, and many holes appeared. These were all distorted by the Sharingan. In the blink of an eye, Mikal's body was devoured, and his body was torn beyond recognition. A good person was torn apart like a piece of cloth. What an eyesore! Dustless looked down at the big pool of blood, and then his eyes blinked again. Amaterasu. A pitch-black fire descended without any warning, swallowing Hyakuya Michael's body fragments like a whale, and instantly turned into ashes. Even the ground was burned by the black flames, and cracks appeared. From now on, it also means that Hyakuya Michael has completely fallen, and not even his corpse was left behind. The method used was extremely cruel. And if Hyakuya Yuichiro knew the truth, he would definitely be angered to death. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.